Bargain hunt. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the District Planning Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 27th of October 2022 at the offices of Maldon District Council. My name is Councillor Kevin Lagan and I'm the chairman of this committee, and I'm joined this evening by Councillor Bruce Hubner, who is also the vice chair. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in this meeting, you're giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I'll then invite you at the appropriate time and give me time to also notate the hands up in the right order, please. Please note the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of microphones. Therefore, can I ask you, when invited to speak, you remember to turn off your microphone and turn it off again when you've finished. Please reference a page or a paragraph when referring to the agenda paper and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. As chairman of this committee, we are following the council's protocols regarding public participation, and I personally regret that I cannot allow more public participation on applications except as detailed in the protocols that are agreed by this council, which I feel need to be revisited at council to allow more views and expansive open dialogue. This is my own view. Members, per the precedent of this committee, I will suspend Rule 8, open brackets 3, close brackets. That's the requirement to stand while speaking. Thank you. Apologies for absence. Tara, could we have the apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Apologies have been received from Councillor Beale, Councillor Boyce, Councillor Durham, Councillor Mrs Fleming, Councillor Helm, Councillor Stanton and Councillor Mrs Stokes. Thank you, Chairman.
Tara, actually, Councillor Fleming is actually in the chamber.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I know that one.
That's okay. Thanks. I think that we got a little bit caught up in the ether. Councillor Chenna.
Oh, Chairman, thank you. I didn't hear Councillor Thompson's name called out. I'm not sure if she'll be here or not. Okay. Because I called earlier. I don't think she's particularly well at the moment. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if she's not well, we wish her a full recovery. Okay. Councillor Hurd.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, did I hear Councillor Brian Beale's name? Apologies there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other apologies for absence, members? I think I can see everybody who's here. Members, we now move. It's recommended the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of September 2022, found on pages 7 to 16, are approved as a true and accurate record. Before I move that motion, can I just mention, Tara, that Councillor Thompson has come to the chamber?
Sorry, Chairman.
No, it's fine. Thank you. Right, back to the minutes. Members, I do so move. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Nunn. Members, can we agree these minutes by assent? Agreed. Thank you, members. We move on to item 4, which is the disclosure of interests, members. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that you are also required to disclose any such interests as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. Members, have I got any registrable or non-registrable pecuniary interests today? Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. A registrable as a member of Essex County Council who are statutory consultees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? No? Excellent. We move on to agenda item 5, which is land at Broad Street Green, Maldon, Maypole Road and Langford Road, Heybridge in Essex, reference 22/00523/RESM. Which is found on pages 17 to 62. Members, there was an update issued earlier on in the day. We do have a member of the public to speak on this item. Just check with Mr. Lee, do we do the presentation first? Yeah. Yep. Okay, if we do the presentation first, and I believe, Anna, you're going to present this item. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. It is noted that since the publication of the members' update, a consultation response from the ecology consultant was received, raising no objection to the proposed development. Furthermore, a representation has been received raising comments relating to level of contribution of housing from the development on 5-year housing land supply. It should be noted that the development would contribute towards the 5-year housing land supply. However, the number of units delivered per year is unknown. So if I can move on to the presentation. The application relates to the largest of the 3 sites allocated for development in the North Heybridge garden suburb, known as S2D North of Heybridge site, which was granted consent for hybrid development on appeal on 25th October 2019 under the terms of application 15/00419/OUT. The current proposal relates to phase 2 of the approved development, and in particular the land that is reserved for the delivery of residential parcels 10 here, 11
I didn't understand that.
Apologies. Apologies for that. Yeah. I don't know why it does that. Anyway, the 3 parcels are located adjacent to and to the west of Broad Street Green Road, which is here, and northeast of Heybridge Wood, here. It should be noted that the development does not include any land that is necessary to provide the strategic landscaping and infrastructure elements, such as roads, SADS features, or public open space, so whatever is outside the red line. It should be noted that a revised strategic phasing plan was approved in January 2022 under the terms of application 21/05187/DT. The map here shows the area phase, the agreed phase 2 area in red, which is this part here, and down there, this is 2A. The application that we are determining tonight relates to phase 2 on the northeast of the site, and not the area relating to the local centre, which is down here, and it's now known as 2A. So planning permission is sought for the construction of 262 residential units with associated access, parking, servicing, and landscaping. This is the master plan. The development would involve the provision of 79 affordable units, as shown on this plan. Green is social rent, and orange are the shared ownership. The development would comply with the densities parameter plan as approved under the outline permission, as well as the building heights. The development would be primarily 2-story in height, with some 3-story elements in the apartment blocks, where I have my cursor. There will be 4 2.5-story dwellings on that area here, and there are also some bungalows proposed in yellow on that plan. This is the landscape plan. Materials to be used on the site would be primarily red and cream brick, and weatherboarding and slate and clay roof tiles. This is a parking strategy. All of the garages and parking bays would comply with the minimum standards as set out within the Vehicle Parking Standards SPD. This plan shows the footpaths and cycle connections with the rest of the network within the site. The refuse collection plan, car charging strategy plan. All dwellings would benefit from one vehicle electric charging point for electric vehicles. The boundary treatment. Following consultation with the conservation officer, it's been agreed that the houses along the northern part of parcels 10 and 12 and 11 would have a different type and configuration of windows, so they are more traditional and respect the listed buildings within Poplar Grove Farm to the north. This plan shows the different dwelling types. As you can see, there are several dwelling types proposed, 24 plus 3 apartment blocks. These are some streets in elevations. I'll give you some examples. This elevation down here is along the southern part of parcel 11. Here, again, the one down here is along the elevation along Heybridge Wood. As you can see, this is the apartment block, and it drops down from the 3-story to 2 stories. These are some street scene elevations from within parcel 12. Oops, sorry. This elevation is across the northern part of parcel 12. It shows all the 3 apartment blocks and the building hierarchy, which drops down to 2-story houses. More street scenes from within parcel 12 and parcel 10. This is a selection of the dwellings proposed and the apartment blocks. This is the plans of apartment block 1 and the elevations. The plans for apartment block 2 and the elevations. This is the largest of the 3 apartment blocks and the elevations. This is a 1-bedroom bungalow. This is an affordable. This is a pair of affordable semi-detached bungalows. All of the bungalows within the site are affordable. This is an example of a 2-story market dwelling. Another one, a 2-bedroom, 2-story affordable unit. These are all examples. There are more than what I have included into the presentation. This is a 3-bedroom affordable dwelling. This is a 3-bedroom market. Again, another 3-bedroom market. This actually shows the different window configuration along the properties along the northern boundary of the site. A 4-bedroom, another 4-bedroom. This is the design and appearance and scale of the double garages. And these are some visuals. This is from the view from Heybridge Wood. This is from the Broad Street Green roundabout. This is the largest of the 3 blocks. This is a view along the northern boundary. You can see the different window type. And this is a view from within the Spine Road, looking towards the north, parcel 11. And some photographs of the site, view from Broad Street Green, and down here is S2F site, part of the allocated sites. Again, more views from Broad Street Green. This is Heybridge Wood. This is the application site. Again, this is the application site, and the properties opposite the application site along Broad Street Green Road. So the principle of development of this site has been accepted as the site forms part of the North Heybridge Garden Suburb. Strategic site reference S2D. The details of the residential element of phase 2 of the development are considered to accord with the North Heybridge Garden Strategic Master Plan Framework, the North Heybridge Strategic Design Codes, the approved parameter plans, and the planning permission, the outline planning permission. Consideration has been given to the co-location of the commercial early years facility within the local centre and not within this residential phase 2, and it is considered that is acceptable. Overall, it is considered the layout, mass, height, form, design, appearance and landscaping of the development would be acceptable, and it would be a good representation of the character areas that are aimed for this section, and would be a good and of the North Heybridge Garden Suburb. It is also considered that the proposal would provide a level of affordable housing that complies with the approved outline permission. The housing mix would also be in accordance with condition 37 of the approved outline permission. The proposal as a whole would provide an acceptable quality of life for the existing and future residents, and a level of parking that accords with the vehicle parking standards SPD. No objection is raised in relation to the impact of the development on highway safety or the highway network. the impact on existing vegetation would be acceptable and the development would deliver net biodiversity gain. And on that basis, this reserve mass application for phase 2 is considered acceptable and therefore is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions on pages 56 to 61 of the agenda and conditions 1 and 17 as corrected within the members' update. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms Tastekolu. That's very, very kind. Thank you. Members, will just inform you, have one public participant. That's Mr Jamie MacArthur from Bellway Homes, speaking as the applicant. Jamie, good evening. If you just want to try and come to find a microphone, Councillor Mays has kindly indicated there. There it is. Yeah, well, welcome, Mr MacArthur. I'm sure you know that we've got a big timer on the screen in front of you. You get 2 minutes from the time to, and you start speaking until the timer clears, or if you finish in time for that. As soon as you start speaking, Mr MacArthur, we'll start.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Yep, excellent. Okay. Good evening, members. My name is Jamie MacArthur. I'm the Regional Planning Director for Bellway Homes. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Planning Committee. As there are no objectors speaking against the application, I will be brief. Bellway is one of a small number of five-star house builders in the UK. We have a proven track record of delivering high-quality design-led schemes across Essex. We have acquired these parcels from Countryside and are seeking to deliver 262 new homes, including 79 affordable, which will form phase 2 of the Wyden Garden Suburb Master Plan. Having 2 house builders on site at the same time will increase delivery of new homes in the early phase of development and assist the council's housing supply position. Countryside will remain responsible for the delivery of wider site and all its strategic infrastructure and landscaping. We welcome the officer's recommendation in support of the application. I am also pleased to know that all statutory constituencies are supportive of the proposals. There are no objections from residents. The Parish Council had raised concerns about design and range of windows within a number of the house types, which we have responded to by incorporating more traditional styles for fenestration, which is fully supported by the Council's Conservation Officer and addresses concerns raised. Since the application was submitted, we have made several amendments to the design of the scheme to address concerns raised. This resulted in the loss of 5 dwellings and has ensured the proposals schemes complies with all council's required design and space standards and also approved parameter plans and character area requirements. We are committed to delivering high quality and sustainable scheme. The necessary funding and construction team is in place to start works as soon as possible. The application will provide a range of planning and regeneration benefits, including delivery of much needed new homes and associated direct investment this brings, in turn providing wider economic benefits. In summary, the principles of development has been established by the outline and the application is fully compliant with the requirements of that permission. And as your officers concluded, proposals are acceptable in planning terms and I therefore encourage members to approve the application in accordance with the officers' recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr MacArthur. You've obviously done that before, because that's a split second. Any other comments from the officers before I move to members? Members, we have a recommendation to approve this application. Do I have a seconder for that recommendation? Councillor Thompson. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Seconder for that? No, she did second it. Did you? Who not? I proposed it. Did I propose it? Did I really? There I go. So we'll have a seconder. It's been a long day. Okay, so members, I'll open the floor to the debate. Right, it's Councillor Edwards, and then Councillor Nunn. Okay, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I start off with the members' update? In the members' update, there is a response from Heybridge Parish Council, and I understand that it was late. And can I explain the reason for that? The reason was they were never consulted in the first place. It went to Great Totham Parish Council, and when it was queried by Heybridge Parish Council why they haven't got it, it was because it's in Great Totham. Can I ask that in future that developments such as this, which cross 3 boundaries actually, because there's Langford involved, that they're all included, or at least the parish council is included, so they can consult, because technically it's in Great Totham, physically it's in Heybridge, and it's part of Heybridge infrastructure, or will be. So if I could ask that, please. But that's the reason for the delay in the parish council response. Okay, I have a few questions. So if I can start on section 5.537. Sorry, I'll start again. 5.5.51. And you're going to ask me the page number. Oh, can't find it myself. 43. It aims to have cycling or cycleways within the site. Now, I know what the answer is going to be, because each development or application we get for a particular part of this development, we can only discuss the cycleways within that particular development. The problem is there's no connectivity to the other phases, nor is there connectivity to Heybridge itself from cycles, regarding cycleways. 5.71 says it's not close to any woodland. Well, it is. It's next to an ancient woodland, which is Heybridge wood. And my question on this one is, the biodiversity was mentioned, but what biodiversity or geodiversity gain is from this development? So that's my first question. Section 5.6.4, I noticed that some of the buildings will have to have noise attenuation products built into the housing because it's next to the relief road. So my question on that one is there any way that noise attenuation can be built onto the relief road facing those houses that need this extra building materials put on because of the noise? And that's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Rivers. First of all, I think we should note that Councillor Rivers' request to make sure that we get all the parishes informed of details going forward. The other questions over to you, Anne, please.
Yeah, through Chairman. Yeah, that has already been agreed about the parishes via an email to Councillor Edwards in the past. In relation to the cycleways, if there were any highway improvements, including cycleway links outside the site, that should have been part of the outline permission. That wasn't. So what we can secure is whatever is within the site, and we can secure cycle paths within the site. In relation to net biodiversity gain, the applicant has submitted an ecology report that sets out all the ecological enhancement that includes, which is typical, shift boxes, bee bricks, all of the typical net biodiversity gains. Also, the site includes a landscaping scheme with native species, trees and other shrubs. So this all adds to the net biodiversity gain. The last question was. Sorry.
5.6.4.
5.6.4. 5.6.4. Noise. Yeah. If there is a need for additional or different type of materials or different configuration of windows, the applicant would have to submit a variation of condition application to vary the design. If any noise attenuation measures would require a different design of the houses from what is being assessed tonight.
Can I come back, Chairman?
Certainly, yeah, thank
I was asking if it's possible to put some sort of noise attenuation along the relief road facing those houses.
Yeah, thanks.
Through you, Chairman, the main attenuation is the noise band, which is proposed along here. This is the attenuation band. This is the main noise attenuation for the site, but this is outside this application because this is part of the landscape infrastructure which was determined in the past.
Can I come back, Chairman? Then why do we have to have specific building materials put in those houses? because of the noise.
Through you, Chairman. As part of the report submitted, obviously there's mitigation proposed to overcome any harm in relation to noise and disturbance. Obviously, as Ms Tashdoglu said, the application for the road's already been granted and there is a level of mitigation in that. As explained in the officer's report, the level of mitigation required is in accordance with the building regs requirements. It's not a particularly high standard, it's not an unbelievably onerous level, and it won't have any impact on future occupiers' residential day-to-day living. It's not requiring windows to be sealed or box-type development. So it's not considered that this is some particularly large or onerous requirement. It's just that there is a little bit more needed on this, and therefore it's appropriate to impose a condition. The level of requirements, even if you could do it in this, would probably be needed to completely silence the road, would be so much more disproportionate that it wouldn't be appropriate to impose a condition on that rather than on a relatively small number of houses for only a slightly higher degree of insulation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I come back with another question I forgot to ask?
Members speak. Thank you.
I do notice that every house will have a charging point, but bearing in mind we have a climate emergency, has there been any thought on solar panels? Thank you.
Through you, Chairman, as I've said multiple times at committee on this, it's not in our policy. The MPPF in relation to that relates to plan making, not decision making. It's an additional cost that has not been assessed as viability part of our local plan, and we do not have a policy that can require that. So the answer is no. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. May I draw members' attention, please, to page 31, 5.1.4. I'm really disappointed that the commercial early years facility is not being delivered in phase 1 and phase 2 as was outlined in the parameter plan. This reads like a bunch of excuses as to why it shouldn't be delivered there, and quite frankly, we will never make residents positive about development when we don't deliver the infrastructure we've promised. We can't hope for that. And that's the reality. I'm passionate about early years provision. I have 4 children myself, so I've got lots of experience of what it means to have that there. And also for men and women, but particularly for women, the opportunity to go back to work and what that means for the local economy and growth. And I just wish that we could have pushed a little bit more for this to be delivered as it was promised. Because while the argument, and I did actually approach the officers earlier about this a couple of days ago on email to ask about the timeliness, because the reason it was supposed to be delivered in phase 1 and 2, my understanding from everything, was to do with timeliness of delivery. Now, obviously, the section 106 will trigger the point at which the commercial facility is available. However, if we don't have it built and that trigger comes, it won't be there, will it? So it may well affect the timeliness of it. And I just feel that this is absolutely not the way we want to go. The optics on this, we look like a council that's rushing things through for the sake of our housing land supply, without worrying about delivering the facilities and the infrastructure that's promised. And that's my real concern with this application. It's not political grandstanding, as some people might say. I'll always say the same thing about this. We will never get members to want development unless we provide the infrastructure that is promised with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spenceley. Any comments from officers?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. I just wanted to highlight, I appreciate the comment, I just wanted to highlight that the parameter plan did allow the flexibility of this early years facility, commercial early years facility, to be located not within one of the residential parcels, the residential phases 1 or 2, and it could be, and also the master plan have considered that, and there is, this is in paragraph 5.1.4, there is this paragraph within the master plan framework stating that the education requirements includes 2 early years facility. It is proposed that at least one of the early years facility would be accommodated within the local centre, but it says that the co-location is designed to encourage activity of the local centre, and it says that the second facility could be accommodated within the local centre, as well as effectively both of the early years facility could be located within the local centre. So this, and following on within the report, we have considered that flexibility, but also we have sought justification from the applicant so that we make sure that the location of it, not within the residential parcel 2, but within the local centre, would not impact on the other facilities and services within the local centre. So it's not that we've just accepted it as it was. We saw justification that it will not impact on the deliverability. In relation to its trigger, as Councillor Spenceley said earlier, this is triggered through the Section 106 agreement, and this is in relation to the marketing strategy, and that has now been agreed with Essex County Council Education. Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Next on the list, I've got Councillor Nunn, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, I know this is a reserved matters application, and that planning permission was granted, albeit on appeal, in 2019. But there are two areas that continue to trouble me in terms of the reserved matters. The first relates to 7.3 on page 55-56, which it won't surprise you to learn, Chair, is about heritage. Poplar Grove is an important listed building, and integral to that listed building is its wider landscape setting. It's not intended to be a place that's surrounded by and close by modern houses. And I ask at 7.3, the comments from the consultee, is it really less than substantial in terms of its impact on a listed building? Shall I make my second point, Chair, or do you want me to stop there?
Both points, and then we'll get the officers to respond.
My second point, and this will be well known to people who drive along Broad Street Green and Maypole Road, or Maypole Road, the new Maypole Road, as it is. 7.2, page 54 and 5.7. The pressure on that road system, both of those roads, is substantial at the moment. 262 more houses. What will that really equate to in terms of the number of cars? And why are we not insisting on a proper traffic impact assessment before we proceed with this number of houses? Thank you very much.
Councillor Anna, thank you.
Through you, Chairman. In relation to the first point, the Conservation Officer has considered the impact and found it to be less than substantial. We should have in mind that the development of 1,138 dwellings on that side was previously considered acceptable, and it was allocated within our LDP. So the impact from housing on the listed buildings was considered at that time. To alleviate some of the impact caused by the design, the Conservation Officer suggested that the fenestration type is different along the northern part of the dwellings, and this was incorporated to the design of those dwellings fronting onto the listed buildings. There is a substantial distance away. These houses would be highly screened by the noise band, regardless of their design. In relation to the second point, there was a highway impact assessment submitted as part of the outline application. The impact of this amount of houses that they were considered acceptable within this allocated site were considered at the time. So the volume produced and the impact and the capacity of the network was considered at the time of the outline permission. And this site was within our LDP again to deliver this amount of housing. So this was part of the consideration of the outline commission.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll have to give way to the experts then in terms of the conservation issue. But in reality, as I say, those of us that drive along those roads know what the traffic impact is at the moment, let alone what it would be like with those additional vehicles. So I thank my colleague here for her comments, and I won't hog this. I'm happy to move on.
Thank you, Councillor Nunn. Councillor Fleming, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Anna, can we just turn to page 48? I just wanted to double check 5.8.1.4. It says that the applicant has advised that permeable paving to shared driveway and visitor parking bays would also be introduced as another surface water treatment. Is that covered by the, I think it's condition 16 that is, I just want to double check that that's fully nailed down and it's not just an optional extra. Your advice, thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Chairman, yes, that's correct. Condition 16 about drainage, relating to drainage strategy, does include the permeable paving on those areas, yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor White, next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm following on for Councillor Spenceley, actually. On page 89, the wording is it changes its mind every time you read a different paragraph. But it does say that an HRA has not been submitted, though I say in another bit it says it has been submitted. And then it goes on to mention section 106 for RAMs. They haven't done a section 106 yet. And yet every time we have small applications for one house come before North West Planning, they're put down for refusal because they don't have a section 106 agreement in writing. So why are we giving all this leeway to the big developers? The other thing is, when you read a bit further, Natural England hasn't commented yet. Then I go on to page 88, which is 5.8.6. Essex Suds has not got back to us yet, if I've read that correctly.
Chairman, I think we're on the wrong application here.
Are we?
Councillor White, yeah.
Sorry, I do apologise. Am I on Burnham? Oh, I've got the wrong ones. I'll go back and get the right one. I'll come back later.
Well, it's thank you, Councillor. We will come back to.
We didn't get the bridle way.
I can pick up the rounds point, it'd be the same, so it actually would be the same. So I can pick up.
Do you want to do that? Yeah. Thank you.
Dear Chairman, I will pick up the RAMS point because it would be the same irrespective of this. And to be honest, I think I've verbalised this previously. It is good practice for reports, for recommendations to come to the members on large schemes before the Section 106 has been undertaken, signed, delivered. As you know, this can take quite a long time. And that is the planning process, that you come forward with an application, with a recommendation. If it's up for approval, it has a list of heads of terms which are there for members to see and to agree. In relation to a refusal, if you are going to be refusing an application, it's good practice that you include a reason for refusal. That is, Section 106 has not been assigned. It doesn't mean that they aren't willing to sign a Section 106. All it's saying is that one has not been signed for the same reason that it's a lot of time and money and expense. So you wouldn't, if you're going to be looking to refuse an application, request the applicant to do this and extend the period before you could bring it to committee. So that's the reason. It's there's just a difference between when an application's up for approval and an application's up for refusal. They're just different processes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Councillor Hurd, next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to speak about the noise attenuation that's been mentioned earlier. If these 2.5 and 3-storey buildings are going to be along the northern part of the relief road, how will that noise fund work?
Yeah, please feel free.
Through you, Chairman, all the properties along the northern part, which are subject to additional noise attenuation, are 2-storey buildings. None of them is a 2.5 or a 3-storey building.
Yeah, but they're going to be higher than the noise fund, are they not?
Through you, Chairman, it's some of them might be slightly higher from the attenuation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be impacted gradedly. Yeah, and that is the reason the further attenuation measures are required to protect the future occupiers.
Okay, so just to confirm, that's the double glazing then, is it? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Channer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the officer may have just shown the plan that I was hoping to see, which was to do with 5.3.10 of page 38. It does talk about building heights, and it does show parcels 10 and 11. So can you show me parcels 10 and 11, please? Again, and show me that it does say that all those properties, and I think you've just probably done it by Councillor Hurd's question, along the village edge, character area will be they've got to be the lower heights, 2-storey. So can you just confirm that and show us perhaps the design?
Through you, Chairman. Yes, all the properties along the northern boundary, this is parcel 10,
Yeah.
this is 11, all the properties along this part are 2-storey in height. The only 2.5 stories along here, but that was what was considered acceptable along the Spine Road to have some higher buildings.
Okay, and then Chairman, if I may, on another point then, could you then show me regarding, I think it's 5.3.13, parcel 12, the woodland edge, that's not called a woodland edge again. Now, I know the report talks about there is a block of flats, but it's considered really that might form part of the Spine Road. So could we perhaps see that woodland edge, and could we perhaps be shown the block of flats and where they are to check, of course, that we do consider they are part of, or will be seen in the context of the Spine Road and not as the woodland edge, because I think that makes a difference.
Yes, for through you, Chairman. This is the woodland edge of parcel 12. There are 3 flats, obviously, that on that corner. There are 2 here, but their principal elevation is along the Spine Road. This is the side elevation, and all of this purple colour here, this is a 2-storey of 2-storey building height. I can bring up the streets in elevations if you give me 1 second. Yes. So here, down here, this is all the village edge. As you can see, this is part of the block of flats. The 3-storey element is back here on the Spine Road.
I'm glad you pointed that one out, because I noticed when your presentation I picked up on that, and there was something I thought, I'm not sure I like the design of that too much. Can we see another elevation of that? The elevation you're talking about, the 3-storey elevation. Have we got something that shows what the design of that is?
Through you, Chairman, I'll carry on. Yes, this is the apartment block 1, which is the one adjacent to the. So, this is what you would see from the woodland edge, from Heybridge Wood, the 2-storey element. This 3-storey element, which is that part here, this is fronting the Spine Road. So this is the Spine Road elevation here. Yeah. This here is the woodland edge elevation.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure it's the greatest design, but there we go. I suppose the design can be a bit subjective sometimes as well. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Siddle next, and I'll come back to Councillor Fleming after the other members have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also very disappointed in terms of the way that we keep sequencing in terms of these development, and that we build houses before infrastructure, we build houses before we get schools, we build houses before we have daycare. Yeah, we get this wrong, councils get this wrong. Yeah, we need to look at this for the future. Instead of looking at the pressure for us to build houses, we need to ensure that we're building the right things in the right place at the right time. My concern is about the apartment building that's on Broad Street Green, because there is an apartment building on Broad Street Green, which is totally out of keeping with the rest of the residential properties in that area. So my concern is having houses on the other side of the road, which are a mixed development, a development that's happened over time, and we now have a whacking great apartment block fronting them on the other side of the road, which I don't really consider acceptable. My other concern as well is, why aren't we having good fenestration on all of this site? Why don't we have traditional fenestration on all these projects? We are a traditional rural area. Why are we not having that fenestration on all of these properties? And why isn't there fenestration on the houses that are on Broad Street Green as well? Because again, that is a mixed development, mixed houses of different ages, and we are not blending in these new properties to those houses.
Thank you, Councillor Siddle. Anna.
Through you, Chairman. In relation to the apartment block, I just wanted to point out that along the Spine Road and in other areas, 3-storey buildings were considered acceptable. So in terms of height,
It's not the Spine Road though, it's on Broad Street Green.
it's within, let me just go up here. So this is the building heights plan.
Okay.
All of it along here and along there, that is within the building heights parameter plan, and it allows up to 3 stories in height. All this part.
So you, on the right hand side.
And here, yes,
on the
it's
right hand side next
yes.
to Broad Street Green, you've got an apartment block.
Yeah, this apartment block, this is all within the area that is allowed to be up to 3 stories in height.
So
This was a parameter plan
I understand
approved.
that, but
Yeah.
in terms of the in keeping with the rest of that road, it does not fit Broad Street Green. It does not fit Great Totham. So the fact that we're having a 3-storey building on Broad Street Green to me is totally unacceptable, and it should be a 2-storey building opposite other properties which are just houses. We are changing the complete design and character of Great Totham by having that property there at 3 stories.
Only one more point, but obviously I understand this is the personal view. I just wanted to point out that the properties along Broad Street Green Road are here, and in between them there is going to be the roundabout and all this land which is landscape infrastructure. So there is quite a lot of distance between this apartment block and the properties along the Broad Street Green Road is not going to be read necessarily as part of the road. In relation to the windows, it's not the fact that a different style has been considered acceptable along the northern part does not necessarily mean that this is the good design and the rest is bad design. It's just a different design to reflect more the character of the listed buildings.
So in terms of those properties that again are fronting onto Broad Street Green, why do we not have traditional fenestration to those properties?
They're not, sorry, Chairman, they're not next to the listed buildings. The listed buildings are up here on Poplar Grove Farm. They're not there. But then again, if you consider that this is something that you would consider necessary, I suppose this is something that we can condition.
But if I just interject a second, I don't think Councillor Siddle, and correct me Councillor Siddle if I'm wrong, is talking about listed buildings, talking about street scene and fenestration.
I'm talking about the character of the Great Totham village. This is in Great Totham. Broad Street Green at the moment is a rural road with a ribbon development. The houses opposite are small scale and are traditional houses. They're not listed, but they are traditional houses with traditional windows. So therefore, I'm saying that we should condition that the houses that are fronting Broad Street Green should have traditional fenestration as well, because that will fit the character. I am very disappointed that on Broad Street Green there will be a 3-storey apartment block which does not fit the character of that road.
And thank you, Councillor Siddle. And this is the forum for those debates, is reserved matters application, so they're the things we should be discussing. I'll just move on because a couple of other members who wish to speak, and then I'll come back to other people who just want to sum up. Councillor Bassinger next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the officer said that if this development was approved, it would be added to the lack of the 5-year land supply. It would be added to the 5-year land supply. I just wondered about the build-out rates. Do we have any idea of build-out rate? No. Okay.
Thanks, Councillor.
So there's been no discussion between the officers and the developer in regards to build-out rates?
Through you, Chairman, I just advise that I would say that this build-out rate shouldn't be a material consideration in termination application. So that's why, as a DM process, we wouldn't be getting into that discussion. Whether there may be seen as benefits. That shouldn't be a key part of whether you approve or refuse an application. Thank you, Chairman.
And through you, Chair, thank you. And I do understand that. It was just my interest. I was just interested in that particular element.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bastion. Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Chairman. I totally concur with Councillor Siddle. That block of flats up there along the Broad Street Green is totally out of character with any other housing along that road. Perhaps we'll stick the poor people in there. They obviously don't need a view. I'd like to congratulate the artist with his artistic flair on this presentation. Can we have a look at the master plan, please? I think it was the first slide. Now, that looks like a garden suburb, doesn't it? Can we have a look at the picture of the whole site with the allocation of different style houses? Oh look, all the green's gone. That is a housing estate in anyone's language. It's not a garden suburb. I'd also like you to show the supposed views from all of this open space that we're supposed to be getting.
Do you mean my photographs or the visual?
Well, all these fantasy views that we're supposed to be having on this estate. Look, where's all that space? That's got to be seen from the woods, hasn't it? There's not that much space on there. That is a housing estate. It's not a garden suburb. We had the same situation happen down Burnham a while back, where we were told it was going to be a garden suburb, but it was a housing estate, and it went back. You remember it got deferred, and we came back, and all of a sudden it actually changed. So it turned more into a garden suburb than an existing housing estate. And unfortunately, that's just one view. You've got some more there. So, it looks wonderful, doesn't it? But I can't see that that's what we're going to achieve with this housing estate.
Thank you, Councillor Beale.
Could be me, could be old-fashioned. Perhaps I'm not an artist.
I think it's been raised in the past in the committee, myself as chair and other chair, is that we often have the artists. I'd really like to see developers give us the graphics with all the cars and vehicles parked there, and on bin day to give us a true representation. Councillor Swain, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points. Referring back to the point originally made by Councillor Siddle, I was given the impression at one time that developers or the architects make a point of putting these large blocks at the most prominent point of the development as a sort of signature building, and it's almost intentional. My other point goes back to this question of early years provision, which didn't have to be in phase one, doesn't have to be in phase two. Has it got its own little phase right at the end, and who's responsible for building that? Presumably right at the end of the whole development.
Anna, thank you.
Through you, Chairman, the only other possible position for it is within the local centre. So it will have to be delivered within the local centre. Thank you.
To answer your question?
Through you, Chairman, this is phase two, is part of phase two. So it's the next phase. Is as part of the phasing plan, there was phase two for the residential element to the northeast, and then there is phase 2A, as it's called, but it's being delivered by a different developer. So it won't have to stay until the end to be delivered.
Yep, thank you very much indeed. Anna, Councillor Fleming, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Anna, can we just turn to page 61? I just wanted to ask about informative 4. Can I ask, the owners of Grapnel Farm Chase, have they been in correspondence with you? I think I mentioned this before. I walked the dog along there one day, a while ago, and there seemed to be overground piping and an awful lot of surface water flowing off that site. I'm interested to learn whether you have had any emails from them. Thank you.
I didn't quite catch who from.
From, if you look just south of the site, is Grapnell's Farm, Chase. It's outside of the boundary of the whole development. And when I walked along there, there was a pipe and there was a lot of surface water coming off the whole site. I'm just interested to learn whether you had, as a planning department, received any communication from them? No?
Apologies, I'm not aware of anything like that. No communication.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Spenceley, please.
Yes, so going back to Broad Street Green Road, do we have any image looking onto the new build from the houses that are currently there, directly opposite where this 3-storey building will be? Do we have any images like that at all? We don't, do we? No. So what I will tell you, although there were no objections, is that in the last 24 hours I've been approached by 2 residents of Broad Street Green Road directly on the roundabout. These poor souls have suffered last week. You might not know about this. They had roadworks all through the night in front of their houses with hammer drills, even at 3 o'clock in the morning. So they've already gone through quite a lot. So perhaps they didn't get their objections in time. And they said to me, please tell us there's not going to be a block of flats opposite our homes. They've already just got a roundabout they didn't expect, and now they've got apparently a block of flats. I think people might be under some, if they don't know Broad Street Green Road very well, it's not, I have to say, Anna, a long way away from them. That's a very narrow road. It's a narrow and hazardous road. We currently have, because of a previous planning failure, primary school children trying to negotiate along the narrow path first thing in the morning. I've been there and watched it, and we've had several near misses lately, but that's just something Councillor Edwards and I deal with on a daily basis. So I do object to this idea that it's okay for us to give up on the residents like this and not be more insistent on what we have facing the properties that are already there. I mean, reading the wording of the report, and it talks about a more urban setting. That is not an urban setting. I have to concur with Councillor Siddle there that it's completely out of character with what's there. Those are the other side of the road, right where that is, where that entrance will be. The houses are individually designed, beautiful homes actually. Not listed, no, but this is really out of character, and there actually are some bungalows there as well, so there's nothing 3-storey, that's for sure. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
No, thanks, Councillor Spencer. And members, I think we've had quite a robust and open debate. Councillor Watt, yes, you can. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, I've got the right list of comments now. And thank you for Mr. Lee for his comments on Section 106, but I'm still not happy because we've had signed ones that Maldon District Council put down for refusal in our applications. On 5.7, on the sort of thing about nature, although it's already been approved, there should be in the planting the nature matrix and net gain, and I raised this the last time we had this meeting. So where is it? What is the net nature gain? Because that's why you do the replanting, not because it looks pretty. So that's what I want to know is what are the gains, where are they, and how they've been planted. On the informatives, it says that the flood features are not already listed, and they have to be approved for adoption. Well, why aren't they listed? Why don't we know what they are and where they are? And why haven't they been ready for adoption? That's the first one. On number 3, I raised this the last time around about the water courses and the Drainage Act. And there's lots about the consents, which also follows on to part 4, which is common law, whereas the agreement from downstream riparian landowners, as this was raised again on the previous application. And we were told this would be resolved for this meeting before the application went any further. Because I had objections from residents that were not going to give a riparian agreement for the flooding. So I don't know if they go to the High Court to force it. I don't know what the law is, don't know how it works. And then under 5, which is even more worrying, they mention an act or a statement made in 2014, And it says the final decision regarding the viability and reasonableness of maintenance requirements, which is the most important part of flooding, lies with the local planning authority. It's not within the scope of the lead flood authority to comment on the overall viability of a scheme, as the decision is based on a range of issues which are outside of this authority's area of expertise. So, is nobody going to decide whether they're what the maintenance is and whether it's viable or whether it's reasonable? These are real concerns. And the other thing is, where's the pathways for the walkers and the cyclists? Because there don't seem to be any paths outside the houses. They're all straight on the roads. Thank you.
Councillor White. Anna.
Okay. I believe, sorry. Through you, Chairman. I believe I have already responded in relation to the net biodiversity gain. There are a number of, sift boxes and V-bricks that are proposed within the actual houses, but also there is a large number of native trees proposed throughout the site. This is the illustrative plan that shows where all the trees are going to go, what type of landscaping. All of it is here and within the submission, the ecology submission, the ecological assessment that they've submitted, the applicant has submitted. In relation to the footpaths, again, this plan included here shows all the footpaths that are proposed within the site, including cycle and footpath routes, which are along here. All the purple ones are 2 meter wide footpaths. And along here is the link, the footway, cycleway link through the Spine Road, going toward the southern part of the site and the other developed site, the other allocated site, as it was approved as part of the connectivity plan, parameter plan. Did you might want to cover the? No, the rest of the points, I don't think they are material planning considerations, and whatever is within the informatives is not restrictive, or it's not a condition.
Okay, Councillor White, you can come back, please.
Yeah, I think you misunderstood my question. Natural England, you have to submit a nature matrix, I think, since last year. And that tells you, I'll go on and find the actual number if you want me to, and Google it in a minute. And what I was asking was, you can't just plant the trees you want to. Everything you plant, from grass to a hawthorn, has a nature value. And that's how you get the nature gains. And that's all assessed under the nature matrix. And what I'm concerned about, we're talking about planting one tree here, one tree there. And I know from completing these and going on training courses that you actually have to use specific greenery, and they have to be in specific groups to get the nature matrix benefits. So where are they, and where's the matrix? Because I don't think these random trees actually conform with the nature matrix as required by Natural England. Again, the riparian rights, the landowners, that I'm sorry, that hasn't been answered. Thank you. So if you could show me where that is, because I haven't seen it.
Thank you, Councillor White. Anna.
Through you, Chairman, the Natural England has not provided any specific comments in relation to the development. We have not requested in the past any matrices being submitted. As I have already said, as the first point in my presentation, the ecology consultant has raised no objection, and to the contrary has considered that there will be net biodiversity gain. That's all I can say in relation to ecology.
You're welcome, Councillor White. Does that answer your question? No. Councillor Siddle, and then Councillor Bell, and then Mr. Lee wants to come in.
Through Chairman, I was going to say, my understanding is that Nature Matrix is guidance and a toolkit that's been published. It isn't legal requirement to provide that. As Ms. Tashtoglu said, we have used our consultees, both Natural England and our the Place Services Essex County Council provide our guidance in relation to this matter, and they've raised no objection. In relation to the points on the informative, as Mr Tashtoglu said, things such as civil legislation and other legislation is not material consideration for determination of a plan application. That is why they've been advised that they should put it on as informatives rather than anything to do with the condition, because it's a requirement of the developer, future owners, etc., to deal with that under their own responsibility. It's not us as the LPA to take into account other forms of legislation or any other civil covenants, etc. As always, members are fully aware of that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr Lee. Councillor Siddle, if I could move to, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if the officer could point out which of the 3 apartment blocks is the one that's going by Broad Street Green. So, because there's 3, isn't it? And I'm trying to work out which of the 3 in your PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the apartment block. It's not actually along Broad. Yeah. It's not actually within Broad Street Green Road. It's further away from it. This is the apartment block.
Okay.
From this is the view here from, let's say, Broad Street Green Road. This is that elevation here. Streets in elevation.
Okay. So is it apartment block 1, 2, or 3 in terms of your presentation?
It's apartment block 3.
3. Okay. So apartment block 3.
Apologies, it's a typo. It's not the 2. Is this one? Apologies.
So it's which one?
It's that one.
So actually the one that's the biggest scale is going on the edge of this development, which is just madness, absolute madness in terms of the design and the impact on that road, and I find that totally unacceptable. That we have decided that, or the planners have decided along with the developer, that is the most appropriate one to go in that particular location where it's going to have the most impact on existing properties. I just think that's terrible, and I as the Great Totten Ward representative, I am appalled that you are considering doing that and the developer is considering doing that, and we cannot accept that on that thing. And no matter what you say, it is on Broad Street Green. It may not, people may not access it, but it's next to Broad Street Green.
Thank you, Councillor Siddle. Very good points. To wrap up the debate, Councillor Bell, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I just wanted to come back on the nature biodiversity metric, which is actually now law under the Environment Act 2021. According to .gov.uk, which is where I am now. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Bill's just asked for a final point, which I'll allow. Councillor Bill, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I feel just as strongly as Councillor Siddle about that.
Just bear with us a second.
Whatever you call that.
There's a debate going on, Councillor Bill, because your points will be valid. No,
can I go now?
I don't think you can. Just wait a second. Yeah, right. Yes, if we could just give Councillor.
Through you, Chairman. As
hold on a second. Councillor Beale was actually speaking.
Sorry.
I'll if you can be kind enough. What we'll do, we'll allow Councillor Beale to speak. Then, if you've got any points, I'll come back to you, officers. No, thank you. No, Councillor Beale, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I totally concur with Councillor Siddle. That block of flats is totally the wrong place, and I'd like to propose that we actually refuse this on the grounds of the layout or the basic structure of the way it's been, the layout of the actual whole estate, and the fact that you've got that monstrosity along Broad Street Green, totally out of character with that road. And I mean, Councillor Siddle's right, there's nothing like that anywhere in that block at all. And then you've got the farm over the back there. But I mean, that needs to be taken away. So basically on the design along Broad Street Green, it needs to be, that estate needs to be moved around so that is taken off of Broad Street Green. So can we refuse it on that, or do we defer it? Or
Well, what my understanding is, Councillor Beale, is that we've actually got a recommendation to approve which has been seconded, so we should do after the debate.
Have we got a seconder for refusal?
Well, if that fails, then we can put this forward, and if there's a seconder, then we can
We haven't voted?
Well, we haven't voted on the first one yet. We've actually got seconded application, seconded approval recommendation.
So we can't refuse it?
Well, not at this stage. We need to go on the first motion first. But I'll just, out of respect to the officers, because I did cut you down a little bit short, you was going to come back to the previous question.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My understanding, just speaking to my colleagues as well, is that, that there is the requirement to do that at the moment is not in place. And, so there is still a toolkit that is available, but there is no legal requirement at this time to do it. Thank you, Chairman.
What about D1? Appearance and design.
I think that was a different matter. I think we've had a debate, quite a robust debate, members, and I think what we should do now, we have a seconded motion to approve. So I need to put that seconded motion to the vote. So do I have a show of hands, or does anybody want a recorded vote, or what would members prefer?
Recorded, please, Mr. Chair.
Recorded vote, please, Chair.
Is that seconded, please? Yeah, Councillor May, second recorded vote. Did you get that, Tara?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, so I'll leave you in the hands of Tara. So the motion that we're calling is to approve the recommendation as is.
Chairman, yes, and there was, the members' update did have amended conditions 2 and 17.
That's correct.
So that would be with those as well. So members, if you could just indicate for, against or abstaining when I call your name, please. Starting with Councillor Bassett, please.
Against.
Councillor Miss Beale.
Against.
Councillor Bell.
Against.
Councillor Mrs. Channer.
Abstain.
Councillor Dewick, I don't think
he's not here, Tara, no.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs. Fleming.
For.
Councillor Fluker.
For.
Councillor Hurd.
Against.
Councillor Hubner.
Abstain.
Councillor Hull. Don't think she's here, is she?
No.
Sorry. Councillor Keys. Present. Councillor Lagan.
Yes, against, please, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Abstain.
Councillor Mays.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Morley.
Not here, Tara.
Sorry, thank you. Councillor Nunn.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Shaughnessy.
Against.
Councillor Siddle.
Against.
Councillor Skeens.
Not allowed to vote.
Thank you, Councillor Steens.
Thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Not here.
Councillor Swain. 4. Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
4.
Councillor White.
4.
Councillor Spence, do you have your hand up?
I haven't voted, Chair.
That's a very good point. Councillor Spenceley, please.
Against.
Did you get that, Tara?
Yes, Chairman, sorry, apologies, I skipped the list, sorry.
That's all right.
So, Chairman, the results of that are 5 for, 10 against and 4 abstentions. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so that motion fails. So do I have a motion for refusal?
Chairman.
Councillor Siddle.
Yeah, on general, in terms of this development, if it wasn't for the way that this particular part is designed, I would be voting for this. So what I would ask is that we could defer this for the planners to go to the developers and look at whether we can reduce the height of this particular block, because I think that to me is my main objection. I think the rest of it is well designed, but I think this particular part of the development is having an unnecessary impact on the local area. So my recommendation is that we defer this for it to come back to committee with an amended plan.
Thank you, Councillor Siddle. Can we do that?
We can defer it to negotiation. We can't request that they bring something can't say that, but we can defer for negotiation. Obviously, we can't say they will be back blanket, they might say pee off, and then we can,
Okay, so I just seek some advice from obviously Mr. Lee. So would the feel of that statement by Councillor Siddle, would that be seconded? Okay, so we just need to agree the wording. So that's Councillor Beale who seconded that. So Mr. Lee, could you just assist us?
Dear Chairman, all I'd say is obviously we can't defer it subject to them definitely bringing something back, because they may say no. So what we can defer, members can look to defer the item subject to further negotiations, but obviously we can't say subject to them necessarily coming to a conclusion that would be, and obviously members have been quite clear in their concerns, obviously the applicant's in the room, so we can look to do that. Obviously there's the risk of appeal and non-determination, but we can have that as a motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, I think if Mr. Lee says we can have that as a motion, that's motion in the wording's been forwarded, it's been seconded by Councillor Beale. Members for that motion? So show of hands, Tara. For. Probably easier for me to go against. Anybody against that? Anybody abstaining? Councillor Nunn abstained, everybody else was for. And Councillor Fluker, sorry Councillor Fluker, I didn't see you down there, hiding behind my microphone. Okay, members, thank you very much indeed. Right, I'll just get my papers together. We now move on to application 22008887/OUTM, land northwest of 2 Maldon Road, Burnham-On-Crouch, Essex, to be found on pages 63 to 112. We have had a members update on this, and I believe Miss Matthews is going to undertake the presentation, and we do have further public participation on this matter as well. So Miss Matthews, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Just before I start, just draw members' attention to there's an update that has been circulated, and in addition there's a further letter of objection that's been received, which doesn't, and the only additional issues that are raised or concerns that are raised is it would prejudice the emerging local plan, and elderly homes should be spread out and not all within Burnham. These comments are noted. Also, to note is we've just been talking about this, biodiversity net gain assessment has been received, which concludes that the development has a potential for over 95% area biodiversity net gain and over 22% linear biodiversity net gain. Linear are, just to explain, are the waterways and hedgerows, things that are in lines, and the area is the wider area. Officers are also aware that a number of consultation responses have not been received to date, and therefore the positive recommendation is made on the basis that no unresolvable objections are received prior to plan permission being issued. Thank you. So this is an outline application, with all matters of detail reserved for future determination, except for layout and means of access to the site, to extend an approved retirement community to the north and east, and also to include additional affordable homes. So it includes the erection of 203 dwellings, comprising 143 1, 2 and 3 bedroom bungalows and 60 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments in two-storey buildings. Includes the layout of state roads, footpaths, vehicle parking, surface water drainage infrastructure, including swales and detention basins, and the formation of public open spaces, including greenways, orchards, allotments, and the layout of hard and soft landscaping. So the site is located within the countryside beyond any settlement boundary. Burnham-On-Crouch settlement boundary is located around 50 metres to the south of the application site at its closest point. To the south and east of the site are a collection of existing properties fronting Maldon Road, Green Lane and Mangaps Chase. Panels Brook, a small stream that runs adjacent to the public right-of-way, forms the northern and eastern boundaries of the site. And you've got Tinker's Hole, which is a lane along the western boundary. The land is bounded to the south and west by a site to be developed as a retirement community to be known as Burnham Waters, providing homes for residents over 55 years of age, to include healthcare and leisure facilities, amongst others. Phase 1 and 2 are identified on this slide, along with the location of Panels Brook, which I mentioned earlier. The primary means of access to the site will be from Maldon Road and the internal spine roads approved as part of phases 1 and 2. So you've got main vehicle access here, and you've got the spine roads that were approved as part of phases 1 and 2 here, and phase 3 will be access off those roads. You'd have one internal access road that way, and then another one coming around that way, and they would be linked by a footpath, so the road wouldn't be continuous all the way around. And there's also an additional 4 metre wide access to propose onto Green Lane, which is down here, as an alternative means of access for emergency vehicles, but primarily would be for pedestrians and cyclists as an alternative means of access to the site. The bungalows will be in groups along the outer edge of the dwellings proposed, already approved, with 2-storey apartments behind. And these apartments will be to the east of the 2-storey apartment buildings approved as part of phase 2. So these are the apartment buildings here, those 3 there, and you've got the apartment buildings of phase 2 approved in this location here. So this shows the housing mix. There'll be a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bedroom units. There'll be a number of affordable bungalows. You've got 30 affordable bungalows for affordable rent in the southeastern corner. This will be this area here, and 14 number intermediate tenure to the northwest portion of the site over here. The option of a financial contribution in lieu of an element of the affordable housing is being offered by the applicant, but the details of the affordable housing will be agreed as part of the 106 agreement. This plan shows the footpaths and cycleway links, which are in green, through the site and linking in with phases 1 and 2 and the countryside beyond. And it also includes a bridleway extension to what was already being approved as part of phase 1 and 2, and that's the purple dotted line there. The application includes a landscape strategy, which is an extract from, which shows the green area, landscaped area along the outer edge of the whole of the phase. This is a close-up of the junction, the new junction, well, the new access proposed onto Green Lane. And then we've got a number of viewpoints. So this one is a view from Old Heath Road as existing, which is on the top, and the viewpoint including phase 2 after 5 years. And then you've got another viewpoint from Old Heath Road including phase 3 after 15 years. This little diagram here shows where the viewpoint is taken from. And this is a viewpoint from the northeast of the site as existing. And this is a view from the east of the site, including phase 2 after 5 years at the top and including phase 3 after 15 years at the bottom. It's an existing view from Tinker's Hole. So in conclusion, having assessed the application and taking into account the conclusions of the inspector who determined the appeal relating to phase 2, officers feel that the development is acceptable in principle overall, and taking into account the substantial benefits of the proposal as set out in the report, which would outweigh the limited harm the development will cause. In particular, the provision of specialist housing for the elderly would weigh heavily in favour of the development. There would also be notable economic benefits generated. And giving significant weight to the conclusions reached by the inspector, as I've already mentioned, it is considered that these benefits significantly and demonstrably outweigh the limited harm the development would cause. And whilst there will be some harm, the development complies with the development plan as a whole. Development is not anticipated to cause material harm to the immunity of the occupiers of existing residents, or highway safety or nature conservation, and it's anticipated that the development is likely to be satisfactory in terms of flood risk and drainage. Matters relating to land contamination, archaeology could be adequately addressed through the imposition of conditions, and the provision of adequate levels of car parking could be made. The applicant has agreed to enter into a Section 106 agreement to address matters arising in relation to off-site medical provision, road junction capacity issues and nature conservation impacts, as well as other necessary obligations relating to affordable housing, phasing matters, public open space, employment and accessibility. All the conclusions reached in relation to the current application accord with those of the inspector who determined the appeal for phase 2, and these conclusions are equally applicable to phase 3 proposed. So it's recommended that planning permission is granted, subject to a legal agreement, a Section 106 agreement first being entered into, and subject to a number of conditions as detailed in your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Matthews. In line with public participation, we've got 3 members who wish to speak. First of all, Miss Jo Coombs. Hi, Jo. If you could again just come to the tables, find a microphone. Again, when you're ready to speak, if you, Councillor Maser show. Again, as we said, we'll just wait for the timer to come up. And it's not hurry. Is that big? Is that big? Can you see that? Yeah.
If I take my glasses off and put them back on for reading, I can.
That's better. Even I can see that now. Yeah. Okay, Ms Coombs, you've got 2 minutes from the time you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Please refuse this application because its cumulative impacts now do far outweigh any benefits. The proposal has ballooned beyond reason, with the developers now pumping it up as much as they can to concrete over the Crouch Valley. It's so big that it will now cause irreparable harm to the character and the appearance of the area, and serious loss of amenity. And I don't believe there's any real proven need locally in Burnham for this extra retirement capacity. There seems to be a warning in the papers referring to the recent planning inspector appeal, but there are many distinct reasons for you to draw different conclusions for this application. It's not identical to phase 1 or 2. I don't believe there's any proof that there'll be access for everyday services for the occupiers. Local health services are in Burnham at breaking point, and transport facilities are literally crumbling. There's absolutely no proof in that in the papers that the site addresses climate change as stated, and for me personally that appears like a lie. Natural England did say that this will have significant effect on nature, and I believe they said that you should refuse it until a proper assessment has been done. The 3 phases together will be so huge that will cause major traffic during construction and cripple the roads when complete. The scale of this development has now tipped the balance into wholly inappropriate. It will destroy the countryside, it's laughing in the face of wildlife and climate change, doesn't really provide meaningful economic benefits, to the developers, and it's trampling all over the wishes of local people. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms Coombs. Appreciate you finishing in within the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
A next call, Councillor Kevin Coles. Councillor Coles is speaking on behalf of Burnham Town Council. Again, Councillor Coles, you probably know the process. Once the buttons, you start speaking, the button will be pushed and away you go. Thanks very much. My apologies. Just bear with us a second, Councillor.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Just got the foot. That's wonderful. So sorry about that, Councillor.
That's all right.
When you're ready.
I'm here tonight on behalf of Burnham-On-Crouch Town Council. I'm sure you're all aware that Burnham Town Council and its residents outright condemns the entire Carbuncle development. We have many reasons against this phase of the development. It is outside the development area, the mass overdevelopment of the site, the lack of amenities in the area including a safe and suitable footpath into the town, the lack of sporting infrastructure such as oversubscribed schools and roads that cannot support the sheer amount of traffic in and out of Burnham as it is. A couple of things that were picked up was the external consultee report from Richard Jackson Engineering for the flood risk.
the report was for the developer only, not for planning. They state they do not accept any liability for third-party use of the report. Why has this document been accepted by planners and therefore the flood risk assessment is void? The traffic report by Coty, we believe should not hold merit. This vehicle report was produced by Streetwise and recorded in May this year. This does not reflect the large increase of visitors to Burnham in June through to the end of September. Councillors, I implore you to do the right thing by our residents and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. We appreciate your points. Thank you. And then finally, in the participation scheme, we've got Mr. Stuart Rowe, who's the agent. Good evening, Mr. Rowe. So I'm sure you're well versed in these. So once you start speaking again, we'll start the countdown.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman and members. I'm Stuart Rowe. I'm a planning consultant. I'm speaking in my capacity as agent for the applicant. Members will know the Burnham Water site well, and I'm sure the recent appeal decision granting permission for Phase 2 is fresh in members' minds too, together with the substantial appeal costs which the council were ordered to pay for refusing permission unreasonably. I only raise this because the planning issues in the final phase of the development, which is before you this evening, are essentially identical to the Phase 2 appeal decision. And in my view, the committee could therefore be guided by the inspector's conclusions in the tilted balance when considering the weight to be attached to costs and benefits. The development will make a significant contribution towards the district's acute need for housing and affordable housing, and that should attract very substantial weight. The provision of specialist affordable housing for the elderly should also attract substantial weight, and the development will encourage churning the existing housing market. It will generate economic benefits, and it will result in a very significant enhancement to the ecology of the site, and the evidence is before you for that. And these matters should attract significant weight as well. This is the weighting that the inspector in the Phase 2 appeal attached to these issues, and they are the same. Moderate weight can also be attached to the Section 106 contributions towards healthcare and transport. There are wider public benefits to those. Weighed against this heavy basket of benefits is the same minor landscape harm found in the Phase 2 appeal. That's the inspector's conclusions. And the issues that landscape harm is from the same vantage points. The only other adverse outcome is the loss of farmland habitat, and they are both fairly limited negative consequences in terms of their weight. You have a report from the Chief Planning Officer before you. This arrives at the same conclusion. I commend that report to you, and I hope that you are able to grant planning permission this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, members, we have the report, we've had the public participation, and we have a recommendation. I'll read the recommendation for the report. The recommendation is to approve, subject to the applicant entering into a legal agreement pursuant to the Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 as amended to secure the planning obligations and subject to the conditions detailed in Section 8. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Fluker is a seconder. Thank you. So, members, now we have the recommendation on the table and it's been seconded. I open the debate. Yeah. Councillor Skeens, I'm sorry, but you can't debate because of the lack of attending the recent planning training.
Surely I'm allowed to comment. I'm not even allowed to comment. That was not made clear to me.
Sorry, Councillor Skeens. Yeah. Okay, first of all, I'd like to go to Councillor Bell, who obviously is a ward member. Then I'll ask for nominations again. Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Forgive me, everyone. I'm poorly tonight, so not at my sparkling best, so please bear with me. Obviously, mindful of the inspector's decision regarding Phase 2, I think, yes, that the applicant has a point and we have to look at the tilted balance. I also think that the objectors have a point in that this is cumulative. And what we have to look at is, what is the tilting point? When does harm outweigh need? Now, this is flood zone 1, but this is floodplain. This whole development it's all floodplain. Most of the Dengie is floodplain. I can see Mr. Lee shaking his head. The water has to go somewhere. And indeed, when Robert Jenrick was Housing Minister, he was intending to review the building regulations on building on floodplains. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Large parts of the districts, we've seen the map, are likely to be underwater by 2050. The water has to go somewhere, and we don't have SUDs for this. We don't have one as yet. We also have to look at the LDP. I know we have a 5-year land supply situation, but the Litchfield's consultants make the point that large developments often they don't begin to deliver till between 3 and 8 years from conception. So how much does this really contribute to our lack of 5-year land supply? But our LDP states that elderly housing should be spread between Heybridge, Maldon and Burnham. Currently, we've got it all in Burnham. Additionally, the LDP calculated that we needed minimum, admittedly, 400 homes to be delivered in over the 15 years in Burnham. We've had 1,000 in less than 5 years. I cannot argue that there is a need for elderly housing within the district. There clearly is. What I would argue is the type of elderly housing that is being offered here. £500,000, £750,000 properties with now the service charges and ground rents aren't made clear by the developer. But I've done a bit of research into this. And service charges for similar developments range somewhere between £6,000 and £12,000 per annum. So what need is a development of £500,000 bungalows with a 12 grand a year service charge and ground rents on top of that really fulfilling for our residents? So I think for me, whilst fully taking into account the inspector's decision on phase 2, I really think, members, that we have reached tipping point here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Excuse me, I'm going to leave now, but can I just ask the Matt leader something about the training that I was not able to do because I've lost my democratic voice, and that's not good for the people who elected me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skeens. Ms Matthews, would you like to make comment on Councillor Bell's points?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think one point of correction I think need to mention is that this site is not at risk of flooding. It's flood zone 1, which is there are parts of Burnham-On-Crouch obviously that are at high risk of flooding, but this one is not one of them. There are some small patches of risk of flooding along the Panels Brook, but they've been addressed as part of the application, and there would be SUDs, a scheme of SUDs for the development, and the layout does include a number of attenuation basins to make sure that the runoff is maintained at Greenfield runoff rate. So the development wouldn't certainly not make any flood risk that may exist any worse, and the minor flood risk that is there any worse.
I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, can I just come back? That wasn't what I said. What I said was it's the cumulative effect of building on the ground that it will soak up the water. It's not, I'm not talking about specific, although there is already a flooded area down Tinker's Hole that is permanently underwater. But yeah, it's a different point. It's the cumulative effect of all this building on ground that soaks up water. Thank you.
Yeah, through Chairman, the applicant, through their specialist reports that they've submitted as part of the application, demonstrates that the development would not cause any flooding, and would the runoff rate of the water from the development will be no greater than it already is. The developments aren't expected to improve an existing flood risk situation, but they are expected to make sure that they don't make it any worse than it already is. And in this case, it's fairly minimal anyway. they're using Mr. Lee's phrase, wipes its own face. And I'm sure you've heard that phrase a number of times. Certainly I have. So this development is acceptable from a flood risk drainage perspective, and the further details of that would come forward as part of any reserve matters application. But in terms of the other points that were made, I don't think there's anything I particularly want to say other than pretty much all the comments made were addressed as part of the public inquiry appeal decision that has come out fairly recently, and they were all deemed to be not sufficient to justify planning permission being refused for the scheme. In fact, quite the opposite. The inspector was very decisive on the conclusions that she reached, and that there were no reason for that to justify that development being refused. And this development is very comparable with that scheme, and the conclusions that are reached as officers' view are equally applicable to phase 3. And there's been nothing material or change since that appeal decision to justify a different decision being made. For example, if we now had a 5-year housing land supply and we didn't at the time of the appeal, that might be a material change that might justify a different view being reached. But nothing materially has changed in planning terms since then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Nunn, please.
Thank you, Chair. So 203 more retirement dwellings for Burnham. My fundamental question really questions the statement made by Councillor Bell. Are we actually really convinced that there's a need and a demand for 203 more properties of this particular type in this remote location? And the pressure that it places on the infrastructure, medically and in terms of transport, and really the creation of a growing community distant from the commercial heart of the town. So my question really is, has there been a proper assessment of the predicted demand? Is there objective evidence that we need that number of retirement properties, additional retirement properties, in that place? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Through Chairman, the local housing needs assessment and our specialist housing SPD identifies a level of need in the district for this type of development, and even with this additional phase 3, that need would not be met as a district as a whole. So in terms of the need for this type of property, that's certainly been established, and not wanting to repeat myself too much, but the Imperial Inspector was very conclusive on that. The Maldon and Heybridge and Burnham have been identified as being the main settlements within the district where developments of this scale and size are to be directed. So in terms of whether it should go in this position, officers feel that this is the right approach. It would be an addition to what's already been approved rather than a new standalone development somewhere else. So if phase 3, that number of houses, retirement bungalows, were going to go into Maldon and Heybridge, it wouldn't have the, talk about infrastructure, it wouldn't have the infrastructure that the phase 1 and 2 are also to be provided. So the doctor's surgery and the sports facilities and the minibus service into Burnham and all the other facilities and services that will be provided as part of the community as a whole. In terms of infrastructure and transport, they're all technical issues, and the documents that have come in with the application all demonstrate that certainly as part of transport and access, that the development would not cause material harm. The Essex County Council Highways have not commented on the current application, but certainly as part of phase 1 and 2, they didn't raise any issues in terms of that. And the applicant has, and the only slight harm that has been identified is the capacity of a junction on the main road in Burnham, and the developer has offered to pay a sum of money towards improving that junction, which certainly part of phase 1 and 2 addressed any issues or concerns the County Council had about the capacity of the highway infrastructure in the vicinity of the site. Again, the developer has offered to pay a financial contribution towards NHS doctor surgeries in Burnham in the same way that was secured as part of phases 1 and 2. And in the absence of any objection from any statutory consultee, officers would not be, are not recommending that the application is refused for any issues in relation to infrastructure or capacity in the local area. Thank you.
Can I come back?
You certainly can.
Yeah, I probably didn't put my thoughts very clearly then. What I'm actually saying in simple terms is Burnham's taken its fair share of retirement properties, in my view. Is this the right place for more retirement properties?
Through Chairman, officers are of the view that there is no reason, no defendable planning reasons for this application to be refused on the basis that you're suggesting. That is officers' view, and as officers we do not feel that is a reason that could be substantiated at appeal. I can appreciate that particularly local people and local members feel feel the way that you've expressed, but from a planning application point of view, a development assessment point of view, that there, as officers feel, there is no justifiable reason for refusal on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Very grateful, Chair. Just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting refusal. I was raising a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor White next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right, I'll get back to the reasons for the right application. On page 88, which is 5.8.6, it says that the Essex SUDS has not got back to us yet. On page 3 of the update, 3.1.17, it mentions about there being problems with the size of the garden on the 2-bedroom bungalows. Do they actually meet the design guide for gardens, or do they not? And does the whole development meet the design guide for the gardens? Because surely this must be a material issue. On 5.6.4.1, Essex County Council have not commented yet on highways, and the junctions Miss Matthews mentioned, that's a bit like taking your life in your hands, and I wouldn't want any old people trying to navigate that one. What I want to know is, why are we rushing this through when we do not have responses from the relevant bodies? Surely that's we're not fulfilling our duties in making sure that the statutory bodies have responded and that we're confident that everything meets the standard it should. And the last thing is, with the layout, am I right in thinking you've got 2-storey flats behind the bungalows? And in which case, what's in front of the bungalows? Because do we have single-storey bungalows sandwiched between higher buildings? That just seems very bizarre. I mean, I know we're between a rock and a hard place. I suspect it will go through an appeal, but I don't see why that doesn't mean that we couldn't get a better design. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, which has already been brought up in Miss Matthews, on 3.1.7, it says the majority of the sites in flood zone 1. What are the other flood zones and where are they? And are they 2 or 3?
Thank you. Through Chairman. Through Chairman, I think as part of my introduction I did acknowledge that we don't have responses from SUDS or Essex County Council Highways, and the recommendation of approval is subject to no adverse issues being raised by them that can't be resolved. But based on their comments on phases 1 and 2, officers do not anticipate that there would be any unresolvable issues. And if they were, then the application would be brought back to committee for further deliberation. You mentioned about garden sizes, but I don't think there was anything on the update about, not for this application.
If I might come back, it was under page 3 of the update, under 3.1.7. I think it was mentioning the gardens are under 50 square metres.
Page 3 is the first application.
I think that's the previous item.
I'll go back and give up the correct one.
Okay, so that addresses that question quite simply and straightforward. The application isn't being rushed through. It's got a target determination date in November. This is the first available committee for the application that could go through. There's a PPA for the application requiring officers to deal with the application as expediently as possible. There are outstanding consultation responses, but they can be addressed subsequently to the committee, and as I've already said, officers are anticipating there to be any adverse issues that couldn't be easily resolved either through section 106 or through 106 or conditions, possibly not nothing in addition to what's already on your agenda. The two-storey flats, these are those 3 blocks here, the two-storey flats. And then you've got single-storey bungalows in front, but in front of those would be public open space, running all the way along the edge. So, and as I said before, the 2-storey blocks of flats for phase 2 are in this position here, so they relate to that, which seemed a sensible approach, and they're only 2-storey. And in terms of where are the other flood zones, I would have to look that up, but when I did a search, they weren't anywhere near the site. I mean, phases 1 and 2 aren't within a flood risk area, so they're sort of beyond the boundaries of the whole of the retirement village. Thank you.
Moving on, Councillor Fleming, please.
Thank you, Chair. Catherine, thanks for your report. If we turn to page 77, 5.3.16.4 and the following paragraph, you talk about, population statistics for the district and the fact it's ageing and it's growing. So for me, that's my concern with this particular development where it is, because my concern is with the ageing population, where is the working age population to support those residents? Because I think about my mum who's 78, she lives in a rural area. She needs help in the house. She can't find people to help because they're just not there. The working age population is not there. And we know that, and anyone who has a business in this district knows that we have severe staffing shortages. So that's my issue with this development. Where it is, it's not an accessible location in terms of the rest of the working age population of the district. Are there people to actually service this development? Your comments, thank you.
Thank you. Through Chairman, not a material planning consideration, but what I would say is that Burnham-On-Crouch is one of the biggest towns within the district, so in terms of population and working age population, I would have thought there'd be plenty of people in Burnham who would be available, and that is and in terms of care packages, that is something the applicant will be providing as or offering to the residents if they choose to move on to the site. So that has been thought about and addressed by the applicant, but as I said, not material planning consideration. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fleming. Councillor Swain, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This whole project has been an internal contradiction right from the start, in combining or calling itself a retirement village and yet including a significant amount of affordable housing. Retirement village, one would expect to be self-contained and with mobile residents requiring car parking and so on, and limited facilities, whereas affordable housing one would want to see integrated with the community. And that original development, which suddenly then morphed into phase 1, which was never mentioned at the outset, and phase 2 and phase 3. Now compounds the issue of it becoming a separate settlement, really, and yet with inadequate facilities, and with a domination if it actually meets these the aims of all being over 55. In the affordable housing, with a lot of people over 55, they probably do need to get access to central facilities. So I think the idea that 2 kilometres is walkable or 5 kilometres, well, cyclable, for them is a bit far-fetched. Added to which, this comes back to my points just mentioned, if you've got so many elderly people, whether in affordable or not, or market homes in the area, but no doubt a lot of them would be coming from outside the district anyway. So the point, I think, reinforcing what Councillor Nunn was touching on, whether we're talking about the need for affordable homes from people in the district, is glossed over, because no doubt a lot of the people moving in would be from outside the district. And as a consequence of this development now, getting to this sort of scale, you're getting a demographic problem for the whole town and for that area of a domination of older people. It's remarked upon that it's already weighted that way. This is sort of actually actively reinforcing that, and putting too significant a proportion of the demand for affordable homes, to the extent they're genuinely affordable for people in the district, in one place, whereas people really want affordable homes spread around in the communities where they have come from. There is another contradiction within the planners in 5.3.15.2 or 3 it is, where in the same paragraph they mention that they couldn't support, it shouldn't be supported because of lack of infrastructure, but at the same time it says with section 106, well, that will deal with the infrastructure. Seems section 106 just sort of makes all these problems dissolve, but whether the section 106 money can actually be turned into genuine facilities is a different problem for the district and the county to face.
Could I ask you just to be a bit more concise, Councillor Swain, because I've got quite a few other members who want to speak. Thank you.
Well,
not that
I would be inclined to vote against refusing it, but in view of the way previous decisions have gone, I have no doubt that it would be lost on appeal. And this is a sort of area where we need support from Whitehall through the planning inspectors to not have a total strategic plan of the community completely written by developers.
No, thank you, Councillor Swain. I think there's some questions in there early on. That'd be grateful if we could answer them, Ms Matthews, please.
Yes.
Important questions.
Well, I would say the affordable housing proposed is also for the elderly. It's not just general needs affordable housing. So it would, in terms of integration of the affordable homes occupiers, and they would be integrated as part of the community. And I pointed out that they will form part of the development, and they will be supported in the same way, or they will have access to the services and facilities in the same way as the market housing occupiers. As I said, phase 1 has sports centres and shop, and so it is pretty much self-contained, self-sufficient community. So there shouldn't be any real need for the residents of the site to leave the site, but obviously they can if they wish to, and I'm sure they would want to. The other thing I was going to mention was that the affordable housing would have priority to Maldon District Council that on the housing needs register for Maldon District Council, so it wouldn't certainly wouldn't they would have priority over people coming in from outside the district. The other thing I was going to mention was in terms of numbers. I've just looked at the population of Burnham-On-Crouch. It was just 7,700 in 2011, so I'm sure it's a few more than that now. But in terms of the context of this site, in the context of Burnham-On-Crouch as a whole, then it's not that big, to put it simply. And yes, Section 106s do make all the issues resolved, because that's the very purpose of them, is to address the issues or the shortfalls of a development, and to make sure that any issues or harm that development might cause are dealt with in an appropriate way. In the same way, conditions are imposed to make a development acceptable and shouldn't be imposed unless they are needed to do that. Thank you. I think that were the questions.
Thank you very much indeed. I do hope that the residents do leave. It always be a bit more like the prisoner. And over 50, not everybody over 55 is written off. You know, I speak to myself and other members who are physically fit and well, which is great. Councillor Hurd, please.
Thank you, Chairman. All my questions are contained on page 86 and 87. I'll go to 87 first of all, 572. First, I'd like to say I don't appreciate the big stick being waved in the form of a previous appeal being waved to try and sway us tonight. I think I take up on Councillor Bell's point that the cumulative effect of this does well affect that, and that is reflected in 572, because we're talking about the quality of life for the occupiers of these residents. Now it's saying on the second paragraph that the amenity space is going to be relaxed as it was in phase 1 and 2. The amenity space available is going to be relaxed in order, I think that the term is for social inclusion, or are they just squashing them together? So I'm a little bit concerned about that, because if it is not complying with the minimum amenity space, and that's the whole point of having a minimum, if it's not on phase 1 or 2 or 3, then what we're doing is setting a precedent not to have that amenity space. So I'm quite concerned about that, and perhaps the officer might be able to help me with that. The other thing is across the page is talking about car parking spaces, and it seems to me that that there is no specific provision included for car parking spaces for the bungalows proposed. So presumably whoever buys a bungalow won't have a car, won't have a visitor. If it's saying on here that there are, because it's saying that there is one space per dwelling, but then it seems to contradict that. It talks about the value of 2 off-street parking places available. Now, we've already had a hint by Councillor Durham at a previous meeting that Essex County Council are looking into off-street parking and maybe limiting that. So I think, is this a sustainable development? I'm not sure that it is. And my final point is, again, of course, it's outside of the boundary of the town, and mainly for older people. Do we not? I don't think that there is a footpath that actually connects this development to the town. So are we expecting people to walk in the road on the B1010, I think it is, isn't it? Are we expecting people to walk on the road to go the 1.5 miles into town? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd. Ms. Matthews, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry if you feel that the appeal decision is being waived as a stick, but it's a very, very material planning consideration, and it cannot be ignored, even if the conclusions reached went against what the council's wishes were. In terms of quality of life and the relaxation of mini space, the relaxation, maybe that was the wrong word to use, but the relaxation was on the private amenity space. So each bungalow will have a small area of private amenity space, but they will also have an area of communal amenity space to be shared within their little communities, and that shared area may be allotments or just sitting out area. So and that exactly the same approach that was taken in phase 2 and phase 1 and was accepted by the council as being appropriate, and it, in terms of setting a precedent, it's only setting a precedent if the same circumstances apply again, exactly the same circumstances apply again somewhere else. So yes, it would set a precedent if you had a similar development to this somewhere else in the district, but in terms of general needs housing, it wouldn't, because it's being supported here on the basis that the type of housing proposed.
The Chairman, also I would add is that we did accept it at the Tollsbury Older Person Scheme as well, so this is an approach that the council has taken, not just on this site, to other sites as well that have provided older people housing. So the planning system is set up for consistency, and it would obviously be a concern if we were to revisit that at this stage. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. In terms of the parking, each of the bungalows, I apologise if the report isn't clear, but each of the bungalows would have its own private off-street parking. The flats would have more of a communal area parking, but in addition there would also be visitor parking areas as well. But this application is only outlined, so those sort of specific details would come out as part of or be included as part of the reserve matters application. But there is certainly more than enough space on that site for every one of those properties to have parking provision that will comply with the parking standards that have been approved. In terms of footpath link to town, this is the main access into the sites, and I understand there is a short section of the road where there isn't a footpath, but that link has been secured and required as part of the phase 1 development. So there, as part of the improvements to Maldon Road associated with the development, there would be a footpath link. So occupiers of the site would be able to walk on a footpath all the way from this site into the centre of Burnham without having to walk on the road. I think that answers everything. Thank you.
Councillor Hurd.
Well, I just want to come back, thank you for that. But 5.6.3.7, in the middle of page 86, no specific provision is included for car parking spaces for the bungalows proposed. That's what it says.
Through you, Chairman, as it then goes on to state, we can require this through condition. It's, as I said, it's outlined, so we don't have that level of detail at the moment. So it would be something that would, that's required as part of reserve matters. That's why we don't have the details, rather than they're not going to actually provide the car parking requirement. Thank you, Chairman.
Can I just for a point of clarity on that? So what you're saying is if there was a condition, it would be dealt with by the parking standards supplementary planning document. Is that correct?
Yes, through Chairman, there's a condition that requires that the reserve matters application includes parking provision to accord with the adopted parking standards. But even if there wasn't a condition, that would be the expectation anyway for any assessment of any detailed scheme for the site.
Thank you. Yeah, just a valid point, because we've been in the chamber before when we've raised something later further on as the planning and processes goes, and we said it's too late to raise that. We should have raised that previously. So it's very good points. Councillor Siddle, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sort of backing up what Councillor Hurd has just said on 5.7 on page 87. And we in the previous phases, and we have relaxed this density idea and the private space. Now, there's a clue in terms of what this application is. It's an outline application. So we're giving an outline development. So surely, if we as members are not happy with this outline, then we can define what we want that outline to be. Yes, there's a precedent in terms of those previous phases. And I can understand the need for this, and I understand the need in the district for elderly residents. The last statement, which just strikes me with horror in terms of the report, it is anticipated that an adequate quality of life for the occupiers of this proposed residential units could be provided. Could be provided. So we're creating this awful thing that people could have a nice life here, but maybe not. Yeah, and that's the thing about this whole thing, and it's about the concern that members had previously, where we probably didn't have a say in this, but now we do have a say in this because this is coming to us now at this particular time. And the density, why are we relaxing the density? Yeah, why are we doing that? There's no good planning reason when we have these Maldon Design Guide advises a suitable garden size. We're not doing this on this particular development. Yes, we did it on phases 1 and 2. Doesn't mean to do it on phase 3. Surely we can say, actually, we'd like a little bit more space for these residents. We'd like bigger gardens and less houses. Yeah, and that would then release some of the pressure in terms of the roads and things like that, because there wouldn't be as many dwellings on this site.
Thank you, Councillor Cyril.
Through you, Chairman, for clarity, this properties are ridiculously low density. It's not that we're relaxing the density requirements, it's the garden area. So if you look at the level of density on the site, you can actually see it's actually lower than was at phase 2 and phase 1, and which were much lower densities than we've required in the garden suburbs. As Ms Matthews explained, what the relaxation we have done through the schemes was about the level of private amenity space, but these sites also then cover and provide a level of shared amenity space and allows for interaction in amenity space which normally are not provided on schemes. So we've allowed for more of a communal feel because that's sort of like some guidance has been found and provided, and so that's fine. But if members do feel that there was a strong belief that this scheme could only be acceptable if they were provided with private garden space with amenity, a condition could be imposed on that. It would be unusual taking into account the previous decisions by the authority. You know, the authority has found this, because we've discussed this at committees previously, to be acceptable, an approach. So it'd be unusual to come to a different conclusion on a phase 3 without any evidence of why it's been unacceptable in phase 1 or phase 2. But if members considered that a condition that required private amenity space in accordance with the SPD, that could be imposed, because it's not saying there isn't necessarily the capacity to provide that, it's just that how we've accepted the delivery has been through a relatively small private amenity space and then a larger communal shared space, which obviously you wouldn't find in the traditional housing provision. So that's all I would say. So, because it is outlined, so there is that flexibility. But you know, it would be an unusual decision to go for as a council to change that. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Siddle, please.
And I appreciate all that, and I think the majority of members in this room were not here when we did the outline for phases 1 and 2. So that's the crucial thing. We are now here. We can surely make that decision or to make that choice about how would these spaces used. I can understand that saying, oh yeah, they've got communal space. I know from when my grandparents retired and moved to their bungalow, they wanted a private garden. They didn't want the communal space where Fred Bloggers is annoying them because they haven't got a fence, and they're coming in and they're nosying. Yeah, people want private space. Oh, people always want private space, and the fact that we are somehow, to me, saying that older residents can't have private space. That to me, probably in terms of my life, would when I want the most private space. When I've retired and I want some peace and quiet, I want to be on my own, and I don't want to be annoyed by other people. I'm a bit like that already. But in terms of that, I think that's important that we, so if there is an opportunity to, in terms of my view, making this making it, the quality of life to be something that is provided that is good, then I think we should look at that.
Thank you, Councillor Siddle. Councillor Beale. Just bear 1 second.
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, and there was a point, sorry, Chairman, to come back, that I did just want to make in relation to Councillor Siddle's earlier point, which I overlooked, is that sort of wording is what you'll only ever get from an officer's report with myself. You know, there is always going to be a level of subjectivity. What someone considers is one man's meat, another man's poison. So please don't take offence to statements like that. That isn't us saying that we're worried it'll be a poor sense of a poor quality of housing, and that is just, well, I'm head of planning, you'll get reports that are worded like that. 6 months' time, you might have very different reports, but at the moment,
I'll jump on them.
yeah, but at the moment, please don't take any of these statements ever as being this not a thing. It's just that, you know, that's just how I ensure that our reports are written. So please take it as a positive, not as a negative when they're worded like that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beale.
I thought you were hoping I was going to forget all the questions.
No.
Right. In the first place, I can't believe no one's mentioned there's a railway line going up there on the northeast side from Mangap's Farm, a popular tourist attraction. It just happened to have steam trains. What are we trying to do? Take them back to their youth? I think the reason we probably haven't got the space that Councillor Siddle was on about, because we're probably going to end up doing a hire on mobility scooters. It's probably how they'll have to get into town. But at the end of the day, phase 1 and 2 should never have gone ahead in the first place. You know, that was down to the inspector, but as you say, that's history. But there's one obvious thing that comes to mind. I'm right in assuming that they've all got to be over 55 to live there? Yeah? So why would you build a retirement village, whatever you want to call that, the furthest place you could from any hospitals? There's not many of them going to get pregnant, so we ain't got to worry about St. Peter's. And if you're going to have a heart attack, a stroke or anything else, you're probably an hour and a quarter minimum from Broomfield Hospital. You know, it's just totally the wrong area. And it's out of the actual boundary of the town. I mean, I don't know who comes up with these ideas. You know, they're on planet Zog, you got to be. And as Lloyd Grossman would say, would you want to live in a house like this? No, not by the side of a railway line that's puffing out steam and waking me up for my afternoon siesta.
Thank you, Councillor Beale.
Thank you. Through Chairman, obviously, and partly in response to Councillor Siddle's comment, that the people who will be living here will choose whether they want to live here or not. So they will choose whether they want a big private garden, or if they don't want a big private garden, they won't move here. And if the people are worried that they might be disturbed by Mangap's Railway Museum, or the operation of the steam engines, then maybe they'll think twice before moving on to the site. But Environmental Health haven't raised that as a potential conflict or issue. So, and they are quite a long way away. This is the Railway Museum here, isn't it? And the bungalows are quite a distance away. And in terms of why build a retirement village so far from hospitals, Phase 1 was approved on the basis that it was the same distance away from hospitals, and so the same issues would have been applicable as part of Phase 1 as much as Phase 3. There is also to be a medical centre on site, and there would also be people around to help residents to deal with any emergencies that might arise, which wouldn't be the case if they were potentially not in the case if they were in the wider community. So there is some provision on site to help with emergency situations like that. Yes, it is a fair drive to Broomfield Hospital, but it's also a fair drive to Broomfield Hospital from quite a wide area of Essex, which is served by Broomfield Hospital. And this is no worse than Phase 1, and Phase 2, which has already been approved without that issue being maybe not the issue wasn't raised, but it wasn't an issue which stopped the development being approved. Thank you.
So I take it neither you or me are actually thinking about moving in there. I mean, are there any medical facilities at all on that site? What is it? A few doctors, if they can get any?
Through Chairman, there is Phase 1 includes a medical centre they will have doctors. That the proposal is that there will be a medical centre with doctors available for the residents to use if they wish. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chandler, please.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman. As the officers confirmed, there is a medical centre. Can she just say if that's NHS run though or private? I thought it was private. And the residents could use if they so wish, but I think it will be a payable charge. Early on in the report, Chairman, and do forgive me, I've lost the place, but it says officers yet to carry out screening opinion for the development. So I'd like some expansion on that as to why, and is it to do with an environmental impact assessment? Also, I'm having trouble, I think, under 5.3.11, recalling a paragraph quoted about villages. Now, I couldn't quite see, I saw that paragraph to be something that applies to our villages, our small villages, not necessarily the retirement village. So I'd just like perhaps an explanation as to why that's included in the report, because that confused me somewhat. Councillor White actually picked up, and Councillor Hurd has many of the points I was going to, and now my computer's decided to go off of a pertinent point. Would you give me a minute, Chairman? I do apologise.
No problems.
I don't know why this decides to go out after now, all this time. Just when I need to quote something. Do apologise, members. Yes, it is going back to the point, no response from Essex Highways. But I notice under Highway Safety and Access, and I'm going to quote from 5.6.41, it says EC Highways have not commented on the current proposal, but did not raise concerns in responses to phases 1 or 2, subject to requirements da-di-da-da, secured either through 106 agreements. There's no reason to expect that a different response would be achieved received in relation to phase 3 now proposed. Well, I think that seems to home in on the access in terms of the junction with Maldon Road, but there are in fact another 200 properties or something. So that to me is a number of possible cars, although we're hearing they're not going to be using cars a lot, they're going to be on electric bikes and a community bus or something. So I'm just a bit concerned that we haven't got a response from Essex Highways, because I know what's very important to them, and it certainly came up at our examination in public of our LDP about capacity on the road there. So I just asked that point, Chairman, as well. 5.6, I'm now going to move on. I'll forget the other bit. I can't even scroll down now. The system's failed. Then if I may, Chairman, if I may go to 5, and again, Councillor White actually raised these points, under 5.8.3, which is to do with the flood risk and drainage, it says a FRA and catchment assessment have been submitted. The FRA only identifies potential surface water drainage. And then 5.8.4 talks about, as a result, it will be important to ensure that surface water within the site is dealt with appropriately to ensure there is no unacceptable risk of flooding from surface water. And yet we've got no SUDS response, and we've got no Environment Agency response, which concerned me. So I just raised those as two matters. Going back to the roadway, there is an access the officer mentioned, and she said that was for emergency vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists. But we haven't got a response from highways about that. Now, to me, when you have emergency vehicle accesses in unison with pedestrian and cycling facilities, that to me immediately springs up in my mind, but I'm not a highway professional. I'm thinking of conflict there very much, Chairman. And I do think I heard the officer say, and also, can the officer tell me, was any attempt made to get any response from Essex County Council, from Highways, any attempt to get anything from Essex County Council SUDS, any attempt to get any response from Environment Agency, and any response indeed to get response from our own internal strategy team and indeed our own tree consultant, which show profoundly on this report, Chairman, we've had no response. And this has been raised by members before about when we go as an authority, the local planning authority, to internal operations within our council, we think there should be responses forthcoming. So perhaps it might be helpful to have an explanation why we didn't get a response. And I would have thought, bearing in mind teams, we could have perhaps got in contact with them and asked them why. So I think that's largely it, Chairman, about the points I wanted to raise. And I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just that lack of responses concerns me. And can the officer confirm I heard right? I think the officer said, we can do all this by condition 106, but if there are real concerns and they can't be sorted out, then we will bring those back to committee. Or to me, Chairman, isn't this the point of time when we should be able to know if there's any elements that need sorting out, so members might be able to consider conditions that ought to be applied or things under the terms of agreement of a 106? I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just asking. And could that not be considered unreasonable behaviour if we agree something and then find out there's a couple of matters that we can't find negotiation outcomes are satisfactory on? I also am hearing now, and within the report it said this is outlined and something we can apply a condition and this can be reviewed at reserve matter stage when it comes back. I have sat in committees where I have been told, because the outline was agreed, we can't bring it up, like you, Chairman, I think you made that point, where we cannot bring it up at the reserve matters stage. It's important the reserve matters stage actually reflects what this authority agrees with at the outline planning stage. And then you're stymied if a problem comes up. So I'm not trying to be difficult, but I'm now a bit confused in reading elements of the report, hearing no responses, and perhaps what the officer's response was. Not in any way criticism of the officer, I just need to understand and have that comprehension, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chairman. Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman. The medical centre on phase 1 is proposed as a private facility, not NHS. The screening opinion has been requested as part of the application, and that would be completed prior to any plan permission being granted. The third question you had about villages, I didn't quite. Sorry, could you repeat that?
In the report, Chairman, I think it's 5.3.11. I think it is. There's a paragraph. I think the MPPF it might be. I'm trying to remember now. I took my notes, or is it 2? And it's talking about a paragraph to do with villages. And it seemed to me that, I couldn't quite understand why that was contained within the report when that seemed to apply to, like, say, our small villages, what we might do. I couldn't see the relationship with why that was quoted in terms of this particular report. So it just confused me a bit. I think it was 5.311. Mention it's if I want to fling back to that, make sure I've done the right one because I've been.
Yes. So the that paragraph is referred to because the application site is within the rural area, and therefore it does have some relevance to the application.
Right. Okay, it was just, I think, seeing all that about villages. I couldn't quite, to promote sustainable development in rural areas, I see that point. Housing should be located where it will enhance or maintain the vitality of rural communities. Planning policies should identify opportunities for villages to grow and thrive, especially where this will support local services. Where there are groups of smaller settlements, development in one village may support services in a village nearby. I think that's the element I wasn't quite sure why that whole paragraph was put in, unless it was meaning the retirement village.
Yeah, so it was included because this is a rural area, and planning. And the second sentence talks about planning policies, but we're not dealing with planning policies or the writing or creation of planning policies. We're talking about a planning application here. But the third sentence does have some relevance because it's talking about new development in the rural area can support the existing villages and existing support services within existing villages, and I think that has some relevance because there will be some custom created in Burnham-On-Crouch and possibly other surrounding villages as well by the occupiers of the development. Yes, Essex County Council Highways haven't responded. And yes, extra development is proposed, and there is an emergency access. If Essex County Council Highways do object to the proposal on the basis of highway safety concerns, then that would be, and they can't be resolved by further 106 agreement or the layout being changed in some way, then yes, the application would come back to committee because as officers we're more likely to be recommending refusal than approval. The FRI did identify some level of flood risk, and yes, the environmental and SUDs haven't responded, but I think I've talked about surface water drainage and flood risk earlier, and the reports that accompany the application demonstrate that the runoff rate will be no greater. There'll be no greater than what already exists, the Greenfield runoff rate, and that is the acceptable standard. But again, if the environmental SUDs do raise issues, likely to be technical issues, then they will be dealt with as appropriate. All these consultees have been sent their requests for consultation responses. They haven't replied yet, but they will. And if we're at a point where the application was due to be approved, and then these certainly consultation responses like the strategy consultees, then yes, they would be pushed or pressured to provide their comments, so the application wouldn't be approved without knowing what they thought about the application.
I think that's a concerning comment, really, that we haven't got all of the responses from the consultees.
Yeah, I know certainly the environmentalists do send regular emails saying we're very sorry, we're really snowed under, we can't respond in our normal statutory period. And I think a lot of consultees are the same, and so their normal response rate are perhaps a bit slower than they would like, and we would like. But but as officers, we felt that didn't prejudice the recommendation or the assessment of the proposal based on the information that was available at the time. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, what I would suggest maybe is that if members do have a concern in relation to primarily, is it the Essex-based consultees, is that obviously the recommendation could be amended to delegate authority to officers subject to those two consultees raising no objection. And then obviously we wouldn't have any legal accidentally issuing of a decision notice or anything like that, just to allay fears. It would be, this is a concern that members have. We can quite easily allay that by changing the recommendation to being subject to no objection by either of those two consultees, on the assumption, as Ms Matthews has said, that it's unlikely they will do, based on the fact this is a third phase and they haven't had issues easier. But that would be a very easy way to, deal with that issue, I would say, to members if they do have a concern. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we'll park that for now because we've got people to speak at the moment. Councillor, yep, no, that's fine, absolutely fine. Thank you. The advice is appreciated. Councillor Fleming, please.
Thank you, Chair, but my points have already been made. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very quick. Thank you. Councillor Bell, again. All member.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I wanted to come back on what Councillor Siddle said, what seems like eons ago, about private space, and certainly one of my friends actually had put down a deposit and withdrew it as soon as she found out that there were no private gardens. But let's just remind ourselves why we're here, shall we, members? We're here because the Phase 1 was approved against the local development plan and against the recommendations of stakeholders, including the NHS and social care, by the administration at the time at committee. So that is why we're here. And I just think it's important people know that. We are where we are, but that is why. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bassinger.
I've actually woken up. Okay, enough already, as far as I'm concerned. This is sort of my neck of the woods. And I think one of the points that we're really missing is the fact that we are looking at people's lives here. And we have got a settlement which is outside the development boundary. This is outside of the town. It's not connected, it's in between Burnham and Hawthorne. It's in a rural area. This is a nutbush. This is not a village, this is a lunatic asylum. We are putting elderly people out on a limb. If you leave Tinker's Hole and you try to get to Burnham, you are taking your life in your hands unless you're in a car. Bus service, there is none. There might be the Dart something or other that goes through every so often. There's no bus stops. There is no way of anybody who's in that village they will never ever be able to service or use any of the facilities of Burnham-On-Crouch unless they are in a car. So all this idea that it's easy reach, 2 kilometres. 2 kilometres is about 15 minutes to the outskirts of Burnham-On-Crouch and probably another 15 minutes in. So sustainability is my question, really. Because although sustainability has been argued before and we lost it on appeal, we're getting another 203 retirement homes in there and some affordable housing as well. So consequently, there is going to be a weight put on the facilities and the infrastructure, which wasn't calculated before. So just to say that because we've already built, we're just going to add on more and it has no consequence, it does. We don't have the infrastructure. There is no infrastructure. So again, I think sustainability is something we need to look at. And I also think we need to look at the harm. If you look at the views, which we did, it is a rural, it's fields. And when they say it will just have minimal harm, well, you put some houses and blocks of flats and a housing estate in the middle of fields, I wouldn't say that was minimal harm. I would say that is considerable harm. So the character of the area is going to be changed. So we've found ourselves in a position of having 2 phases put upon us, which we lost in appeal. We actually lost them in appeal. We didn't decide to have them. They went to appeal. We argued not to. They went to appeal and they won. But that doesn't mean that we can't go to appeal again. And I think if you ask the residents where they would like to spend their money, I'm sure they would say that's what they would like to do. But I also have to think about the people that we're going to sell these houses to, the elderly, 55 retirement. Well, I'm past 55, I can't retire. So really and truly, if we're looking at 55-year-olds moving into these houses, these are people that are still at work. It may say 55 is the age of retirement, but you know, I should imagine most people here are 55 plus and they haven't retired. So they need cars and they need to go to work and all these sorts of things. If we are talking about elderly people, then you need carers. My mother's in a care home. 90% of the carers in the care home are foreign workers. These people cannot afford to be buying key worker care homes or key worker units because they're on minimum wage. They struggle to get carers. My mother's in a care home in Dagenham, which is a massive settlement, as you all know, with hundreds and thousands of people, and they struggle to get carers. So we are thinking of building this wonderful utopia for elderly people in the middle of the fields, a distance away from any settlement, and we're saying that's sustainable. Well, I completely and utterly disagree. I think this is something that we need to really think about. We have a responsibility to the people we're putting into these places and to the residents as well. This is not a good idea. And I think this is something that we should really make a stand on for once and actually think to ourselves, we can go to appeal. We need to defend it rigorously and not half-heartedly. We stand a chance. We stand a chance of doing the right thing for once.
Thank you. Just come back on that, please.
Through you, Chairman, I'd like to say I'm very offended by that statement, and I think all my other officers would be. I think that is unacceptable to make that statement that officers have not successfully tried to defend appeals. The fact it's a public inquiry meant that professionally we are not able to represent the council if we do not have that professional opinion. Unfortunately, no one in the LPA thought it was defendable, and we went out and I spent a lot of hours trying to find anybody that was willing to defend that appeal. So I think, and Ms Matthews spent a lot of time working with that person. We didn't then win the appeal, but that was not because the LPA did not try to successfully defend that. We spent exceptional amount of hours trying to work to defend the council's decision, but officers felt it was untenable and the inspector agreed with that, but that was not because we did not try to defend it, and I am quite offended by that, and I'm sure Mr Fraser is one of the top 10 under 35 barristers in the country would be quite offended to imply that he wasn't good enough to do planning at appeal, so I'm quite offended by that, and I can't deny that I am. I think that's really offensive. Thank you, sir.
Can I come back, Chair?
Certainly can.
Can I just say, Mr Lee, I never said that officers didn't defend it. I said we need to defend it. So I'm not... Councillor Fluker, have you got something to say?
Yeah, Chairman, I certainly have on that point because, you know, I can remember when this appeal came along and I think to use the expression we, I don't think it's quite correct because I know Mr. Lee struggled really hard to find somebody to represent the council.
So how would you say the word, what do you mean by the word we?
Well,
I'm talking about the council, I'm not talking about officers.
Maybe if you let me finish, you'll come to where I'm going to. So part of a normal part of a public inquiry that deals with an appeal, and I've done it myself, the members are represented at the appeal. So they would go along and give their views. So nobody came forward to do that. Nobody came forward to do that.
Well, there we have. Councillor Stamp apparently did.
Well, apparently or apparently not.
No, not apparently.
But
apparently she did. So can we, again, so while you're ranting on...
Please, one at a time, please.
Maybe Mr. Lee will clarify it, but whatever happened, no members went to the appeal and gave evidence to back up why they refused the application. So I think maybe I accept you mean the planning authority, which is all of us, but I think that if we are mindful to refuse this application, then we will need 2 people to volunteer to go to the appeal so that there is no question. But I think the officers might want to come back, or Mr. Lee might.
Yeah, I'm just going to raise a point, members. I've had some comment from the committee clerk about extending past 10:30. I feel that the meeting tonight will possibly extend past 10:30, and I make no apology for that as chair because I think it's an incredibly important debate that we have. But I'd just like Mr. Lee to come back on that point, and then I'm going to move on to 2 more members' points of view, and then I'm going to take it to the vote. Thank you. Yep.
Chair, though.
To you, Chairman. Can I come back on that point? I can provide some clarity, and I won't mention any members' names in particular because I don't think it's necessarily relevant. But a green paper was taken to members. As part of that, it did suggest that members could attend the appeal and represent the council. At that meeting, no members came forward to do that. Subsequently, a member who wasn't at that meeting did contact me, but that was the day after the deadline for the submission of proof as evidence. So any opportunity to attend as a council witness had expired. And as the green paper that had explained, we had a deadline. Officers were willing to proactively reshuffle our agenda to provide support to provide a proof of evidence, but at the meeting no member came forward, and the one that did latterly come forward, it was after the deadline, so it was too late, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Passenger, just last point.
I would just like to say, when I said the word we, I didn't imply any officers in particular. I just meant as the council or us collectively, regardless of what Councillor Fluker says. That's what I meant, and I didn't name or say officers. So I do apologise if you're offended and you took it personally, but that wasn't my intention. But I also think that this is now deflecting away from the very thing of the argument, which is basically, do we want this development? Do we want a retirement home in a rural area?
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Councillor Spenceley and then Councillor Fluker.
I almost feel like I don't want to make any points now, but please forgive me because I'm a new member, and you've probably said this a million times before, but it's just that it's a question that I've seen out there a lot. How do the condition with regard to it being over 55-year-olds? I mean, what if someone's on there and they sort of marry someone younger? Do we tell them they can't move in, or what? I just don't get it. So I just wanted a little.
For you, Chairman, yes. The reason that the condition is 55 is actually the idea is because this is a standard across planning, is that actually that allows the retired person to have the younger partner, not that a 55-year-old will be moving in with a younger partner. That's the sort of divide, because it's left over obviously from when it was. Traditionally, more retirement was also a care package. Obviously, it has moved on slightly, but that's the reason it's 55 rather than retirement age. Thank you, Chairman.
So there won't be a great big bowl for car keys or anything?
No comment, Chairman.
Councillor Fluker, fine, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I sort of, I know this is a highly controversial application, and I think it's right to say the last one as well. And I think we all know what happened on appeal, and the fact that the council had to pay costs of £250,000. Chairman, I was rather hoping, I've read the report several times and I read the cost decision notice and the appeal decision notice. And I've listened quite carefully tonight to see if maybe I've missed something that perhaps we could use to refuse this planning application. But I can't actually see anything that you can. And I've listened very, very closely. I mean, whilst it's very controversial, this, you know, there's about 10,000 people live in the vicinity within about 3 miles. I think there's been 150 objectors. You know, I've been around long enough to know when, and I know my friend over here will as well, when Brickwall Close was built. There we are, that's how old we are. And I think that was in the 60s. And that was controversial as well. But, Chairman, there's some, you know, a lot of this report talks to the tilted balance. And it was the tilted balance that the planning inspector made his decision on, and he weighed up everything. And when you look at that, really nothing else has changed. I mean, Councillor Bassinger talks about sustainability, but the report actually says that the location is sustainable. And I think just by virtue of the fact that you've got the two other developments already approved there, actually gives a massive amount of weight to that, and not least of all, part of this is closer to Burnham. I agree with the comments about the Burnham Bends, I'll call them. Yeah, it is quite dangerous, but the planning inspectors looked at that and they've decided that it's acceptable. So that's not going to change. And planning inspectors, unless there are massive material changes, they don't speak against each other. And I think we should be mindful of that. But I think, Chairman, on page 84, I don't think in all the time that I've been here, and I've been involved in a lot of planning applications through my work, I don't think I've ever read anything like, I've got to keep talking, on page 84, at the bottom of paragraph 5.4.17, where the officer in their professional opinion concludes that overall it's considered that there are no defensible reasons for different conclusions to those of the inspector to be reached in relation to the current scheme. So the officers are guiding us and saying to us, well, look, you know, there aren't any other reasons that we can bring forward to object to this scheme. So I still don't see how we can object to this. I know there's been conversation, or there's been comments made about affordable housing. Off the top of my head, I think there's 61 affordable units. We can argue about what they mean. There's also affordable rent. We can argue about that. We can argue about gardens, but you've got to understand that this scheme is, you know, it's designed to be open plan. And remember that, I can remember at the beginning we had pre-apps and we had all sorts of different things where we changed the designs of the bungalow, which have now become the generic designs throughout the site, and we accepted that we would have these open plan gardens. And I to me, I think it's a statement, and I think it actually, as much as we all like a space, I think that it also means that the community is integrated. But I think the overarching thing is, Chairman, we are not making anybody live here. It is a choice. If you want to have the garden of Mr. and Mrs. Siddle, Senior, you know, you choose a bungalow, don't you? And you've got your 6-foot fence and everything else. But if you're looking for something else, you go to the development. So we can't go down that line. It really is a life choice. So, Chairman, you know, if Wendy Stamp was here tonight, she'd, and I hope she's enjoying herself in Warwick, but if she was here tonight, she would say to me, it is with a heavy heart. And in many ways, Chairman, it is with a heavy heart. But I think that to protect the local authority and to protect everybody, Chairman, I do think that the proposal or the recommendation to approve, it should be amended and tightened up, because what we don't want to do is, when this comes back, as a full application, a reserve matters application, that we're hogtied. And I can all remember the simplicity of that over Southminster when we wanted to sort out the connectivity and suddenly realised we'd done that earlier on and missed the opportunity. So, Chairman, I think that whilst the conditions that you add weight to your approval in Section 8 are correct, I do think that, Chairman, if members are minded to approve this, that we should tighten this up completely and say, and I'll be guided by you, Mr. Lee, and I'll say that, you know, we should be, it should be subject to highways, and I think, Chairman, anything else that anybody else suggests, but I would propose, Chairman, in the best interests of this local planning authority, to approve this application. Thank you.
Okay. Last points from Councillor Bassenger and last word from Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Councillor Fluke has just sold us a life choice. I thought this was a need. I thought this was a need of housing that we had to have because we've got so many elderly people and so many people that need affordable housing. But this has been sold again as a utopia and a life choice, and I totally disagree.
Thank you, Councillor Bassenger. And finally, Councillor Hurd.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm prepared to second, with a heavy heart, I'm prepared to second Councillor Fluker's proposal on the condition that those gardens do conform with the minimal amenity space.
Thank you, Councillor Hurd. We actually have the recommendation which has been seconded for approval. So do members minded to look for a condition or an amendment on that?
I just propose that we tighten this up, and we mentioned highways because I think we were keen to have something. I mean, the officers may well put me right and say that's covered by Section 8, but the members want, however uncomfortable they feel about this, they need to be put into their own comfort zones over the approval, and we need to just make sure it's tight. I don't know what you can do about gardens. I suspect not a lot, but.
Would it be applicable in this case to actually go to put the original motion to the vote, and if that fails, then to put a second one? No, you can amend it at this point in time.
Chairman, I've heard obviously members' concerns about the consultation responses, and you know it wouldn't. Sorry. So that's nothing you're picking up for there from. Sorry. I've heard members' concerns in relation to the consultation response. You know, obviously we have had similar situations before, and it's not an unusual process. So, but for clarity, I do think it probably would be best to alleviate all members' concerns to amend the recommendation to be to delegate to the Director of Service Delivery, subject to no objections being received from the Highway Authority, Natural England, Highway Authority, Essex County Council, SUDS and the Environment Agency. They're the three statutory, I think, are the ones that are missing.
Could we add the Chairman as well as part of that?
It'll be through consultation, but yeah.
Councillor Chairman.
Well, Chairman, could I add to that the ward members, because I do think if you're going to do it that way, then it should be with the chairman of the committee, definitely. And the ward members.
Yeah, with consultation of the chairman and the ward members, I think it would be a fair and apt standard. I think we need to make sure that those parts are covered. Okay, members. So with that amendment, I'll put this to the vote. So, do people want a recorded vote or a show of hands?
Recorded, please. Recorded.
So that's recorded. That was nominated by Councillor Bell and seconded by Councillor Bassenger, I believe. Thank you. So, Tara, we're going to take a recorded vote on this and a reason for approval with amendment, please.
With amendment?
Yeah, with the amendments, yeah.
So approval delegated to officers in consultation with the chairman and the ward members.
Based on those points, the list that Catherine, Ms Matthews had, to make sure we have those consultations.
From those consultees, which you mentioned, highways, SUDS and the Environment Agency.
Was there any more?
There were three.
There was three, highways, SUDS and... Environment Agency was clear. Essex Highways,
Yeah. Would the condition about amenity space be added to that or not?
I think we probably could.
It's up to if members wish.
If members wish to add that, I believe that's the right thing to do. Yeah, okay. The majority of members, I can see heads at bottom. That's okay.
Should we not vote on that as an amendment first, because it might be that not all members want that condition?
Amenity space, I think.
Amenity space, I think, by the majority of members, I feel now it seems to come through. So we'll add that.
Chairman, I think there was a proposal at the beginning for approval and that, but now this is the amendment coming forward, is it?
Yeah.
Is that the way around it?
So we need to retract that for amendment of approval and put the new approval with the amendments in. So that's what we're voting on now with the three amendments and the amenity space. Okay, and that vote has been requested as a recorded vote and has been seconded. So Tara, could you be kind enough to take the vote?
Yes, Chairman. Members, if you could indicate for, against or abstain, please, when I call your name. Starting with Councillor Bassett.
Refuse.
Against. Councillor Miss Beale.
Against.
Councillor Bell.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Chalmer.
Chairman, I can't vote because I left the meeting. If you excuse me, Chairman, after this vote, I will leave this meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Chair.
Councillor Edwards.
Approve.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Fleming.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fruker.
For.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Councillor Hubner.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lagan.
Against.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Mays.
For.
Councillor Nunn.
For.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
For.
Councillor Siddle.
For.
Councillor Spenceley.
For.
Councillor Stamp. Sorry,
She's not here.
Councillor Mrs Thompson.
For, but you've missed out Councillor Swain and I think maybe a couple of others.
Councillor Spencer.
Yeah, I did Councillor Spencer, Chairman. Councillor Swain.
Abstain.
And Councillor Miss White.
With a very heavy heart for.
Chairman, the results of that are 13 for, 4 against, 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. I think we need to get to the medical centre because we've got a lot of heart problems in this room this evening. Thank you, members. So that's carried. As we move on to the final item on the agenda, which is members, just please, just a bit of order for Devon there, please. Thank you. Can you get through there? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just for the benefit of the public, we're just waiting for a changeover of officers. Thank you. Thanks, Tara. Thanks, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Good night. Councillor Chandler left the chamber at 22:25, Tara.
Just defer difference till next week.
No, we've been here long enough, we can get it done. No, it's only fair and proper.
Devin, you've got 4 minutes, ready?
We've got public participation.
Yeah, I know, it's 2 minutes.
Are you okay? Yeah. Okay, members, thank you very much indeed. Thank you sincerely for your patience and your contributions. We move on to the last application number, which is agenda item 7, which is 22/00934/VAR, which is Hall Farmland at 5839412039777 Hazeleigh Hall, Hazeleigh Lane, Hazeleigh. Members, just to advise you that we also have public participation after Devon's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application seeks a variation of condition 4, which is the landscaping condition of planning permission 261/4, which relates to the construction of a solar farm. The application was approved by the Council on the 8th of August 2020, following the decision to grant planning permission by the District Planning Committee. So to refresh your memory, here's the location plan. So this is the South Maldon Garden suburb, the access road going to the south, and then the site where the solar farm would be here. The indicative layout, so you see the solar arrays and the inverters there. This is the approved landscaping plan with hedgerow planting around the edges of the public footpaths. So this shows you the amendments to condition 4 that has been proposed. So for ease, the additional text is in bold and the removed text is striped through in red. So the amendments essentially remove the requirement to ensure that the trees and shrubs used in the vegetative boundary treatments will grow to a height of 2.5 metres and maintained at that height from the 5th year of the development. It also removes the requirement to cease the use of the site for energy generation and return it to its former condition if the boundary hedges aren't maintained at the 2.5 metre height. Again, just to refresh your memory, some photos of around the access track, photos of the northern part of the site. Again, some more photos of the northern part of the site, should I say. The southern part of the site, and photographs taken from within the grounds of Hazeleigh Hall, the adjacent listed building. So in respect of the 6 tests for planning conditions outlined within the MPPF, officers considered that the existing condition would not meet the test of reasonableness. There are factors outside of the applicant's control which could impact their ability to grow the vegetation to the specified heights and density by the 5th year and retain them at those heights. For instance, the council's arboricultural consultant has provided an example, such as when the vegetation may be subject to suppression. Also, the maintenance of the hedge at this consistent height would be considered to be out of keeping with the character and appearance of the area and surrounding vegetation. In considering these matters against the level of harm that would arise from the failure of the screening and the requirement to cease the use if the vegetation should fail, it's not considered that the existing condition is proportionate and therefore the condition is considered unreasonable. The proposed wording, however, ensures that species that are capable of growing to this height would be provided, which would secure a level of screening on site without imposing requirements that would be outside of the applicant's control. Therefore, it's considered that the revised wording would meet the 6 tests of the planning conditions, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Now we have, we may have public participation. Mr. Hartley Bond, who may be attending by Microsoft Teams. Tara, is Mr. Bond available?
Yes, Chairman, he is. If I could just ask the officer to minimise the screen so that you can see Mr. Hartley Bond on your screen.
Thank you, Tara. Good evening, Mr. Hartley Bond.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, can you see the timer, Mr. Hartley Bond?
I can't, Chairman, but I can assure you I'll keep it to under 2 minutes. So,
okay.
I'm conscious of the time.
No, that's okay. It's the time's cracking on, but this is important. So we have 2 minutes to timing starts when you start speaking, Mr. Bond. So when you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, at first, I just want to say we're grateful to your council for the approval of our proposed solar farm at the committee back in July. We noted the requests from members for additional conditions in relation to archaeology and landscaping, with no issues with the additional archaeological conditions. And with regards to the landscaping request, we understand the sentiment to ensure the best possible landscaping for the site. I think it's fair to say, and I hope we're all on the same page, and that we also wish to see the best possible landscaping for the site. The only sticking point is the specific wording of that condition. As it's written, it just creates a problem for us. Firstly, as you heard from your officer, even with the best of intentions, it requires us to do something that is unfortunately beyond our gift, and that is to guarantee that the hedging will grow to a set height in a set period of time. And secondly, the penalty for not achieving that is that we would have to decommission the entire site. Therefore, it's very difficult for us to move ahead with the project due to that high level of uncertainty and financial risk that the wording introduces. The variation before you attempts to strike the right balance, hopefully, between the desire to see sufficient screening of the proposal and a scheme which is deliverable. We hope this is an acceptable compromise to the committee, and we hope that we can continue to count on your support for the delivery of clean energy into your area next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley Bond. Thank you for your presentation, and apologies for running so late. So, members, we actually have a recommendation to approve this variation, which is approved subject to conditions set out in section 8. Do I have a seconder for that? That's Councillor Morgan, seconder Tara, thank you. Members, I can now open the debate. Councillor Fluker, Councillor Nunn, and Councillor Bill, and Councillor Morgan. Okay, Councillor Fluker, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I'm sure that members will be aware of the Abergavenny solar park, where there was actually a condition imposed for 3 metre hedging and screening, and it was actually agreed on appeal. So, you know, perhaps the soil was much better there and they could actually grow it within the 5 years, which it mentions. Rather ironically, they then came back and asked to reduce a 100 metre section down to 2.5 because it impacted on the view when leaving the site. But there's also Stances Solar Farm, which was agreed on appeal. It's interesting that these all agreed on appeal. An appeal on the 9th of August this year. And there were lots of conditions in there about screening by trees and everything else. A lot of those I think are covered by the LEMP, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure the officers put me right, which is a landscape and ecological plan. So, Chairman, as long as we can ensure that the screening you know, does at some time or other come to the 2.5 metres, then I don't really have any objection to this. And I do notice in the report somewhere that it said that it could be subject to enforcement anyway. This is always a problem when, and I think it was actually me that proposed that we had this screening. And I think the applicant who just spoke actually phoned me at home, and I asked him to email me, but he never did, because I'm sure we could have perhaps exchanged an email on this and saved a lot of time. But I think that when, you know, I proposed that, and to me it sounded quite a reasonable proposition insofar as the fact that within 5 years, 2.5 metres, yeah, which isn't massive. You know, we all grow hedges and they soon up to 2.5 metres. But it was never my intent to say that if it didn't reach 2.5, you've got to decommission the whole site. That would be totally ridiculous. And I think it might have been useful if somebody had spoken to me and said, is this really what you meant? And clearly I didn't. But I think we've just got to make sure that whoever builds this site, you know, extends their best endeavours to make sure this does grow to 2.5 metres. And I think, if I am right, the LEMP controls legacy. So, in other words, you know, by the time this changes hands several times before it's built, or perhaps even when it's been built, or at some time, we've got to make sure that there's the legacy condition in there, which is normally in the LEMP. So to make sure that all these conditions are carried through the 25 years or whatever this is proposed for. And the most critical one, of course, is at the end, making sure that the finance is available at the end to clear the site, because this is what the plan. And I'm sorry to boring you, everybody, but it's amazing what you can find out in 30 minutes in Google. And I'm sure Abergavenny is a lovely place, and they'll be delighted when they find out they were mentioned here tonight. But, Chairman, that aside, as long as we can deal with this properly and control it, then, Chairman, I propose we agree this recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Fluker. I think that's more of a statement than questions there. So, Councillor, the LEMP. Do you want to talk about your LEMP? No. I think that I think Councillor Fluker, there was some information sharing there and some views, which is fine. I don't expect the officers to come back on that. Councillor Nunn, please.
So, unless I've misunderstood the officer's report, what we're being told is nature being nature, that the issue of height wouldn't be an enforceable condition.
Chairman, it's not an enforceable issue, it's just the extremity of what was being proposed last time. What we're proposing now is a condition that will hopefully deliver that and should deliver that, but it was the onerousness of the previous one that is the issue. But as you said, nature being nature, we can't be 100%, and we wouldn't want an extreme and unreasonable condition, because that's not meeting the 6th test. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Nunn, do you want to come back on that?
Well, only in so much as I think the applicant has been very fair and balanced so far in terms of the things that we require, and I don't have a problem with the amendments to the wording. Thank you.
Councillor Nunn, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Beale, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's going to come as a shock, but I'm actually in agreement with just changing these few words. No one can determine how fast or slow them plants are going to grow depending on weather, climate, whatever. And I think it's a very practical suggestion, and I agree with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Beale. Councillor Morgan, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I agree with my Councillor Beale. I take Councillor Fluker's point about it being this restriction has actually been held in appeal. But I would just say Abergavenny is in a very wet Wales, and we're in a very hot and dry Essex. And I think to try and suggest that you actually have to comply with a 2.5 metre, I mean, I'm no arborealist, but that sounds very much like Canute trying to control the tides. So I am certainly in favour of allowing this.
Thank you.
Chair,
Councillor
can I
Spenceley?
just come back? This is going to be monitored,
Would you mind just
isn't
giving
it?
way just a moment, Councillor Spenceley? Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
This is going to be monitored as much as possible, as in, they've got to be shown to be actually trying to do whatever.
Through you, Chairman, the condition requires details to be submitted that would show that it should be achievable. Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Spenceley, thank you for your patience.
No, that's fine. All I wanted to say was we must be supporting applications like this. I make no secret of the fact that I'm a huge climate action supporter, so I think that we must support an application like this, and I think it looks like it could be managed reasonably. So I would just urge everyone to consider that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spenceley. So, members, we have no other members who wish to speak. So, what I'd like to do is put the recommendation forward, which has been seconded. Can we do this by a show of hands and consent, members? That's unanimous. Time. We move on to item number 6. Any other items of urgent business the Chairman decides are urgent? I've got a couple of hours worth of speech. No, I haven't. There are none. So, members, thank you for your contributions. I close this meeting at 10:38 p.m. Thank you.